Chapter 1297. When the cloaked cultivator walked to his side, Xiaohua peeked curiously. That cloak was very peculiar, covering the cultivator from head to toe. Xiaohua couldn't see anything inside the cloak, let alone the cultivator's face. He couldn't even sense the cultivator's cultivation level. Height can also be changed? Xiaohua was flabbergasted. When that cultivator came out of the shop next door, Xiaohua clearly felt that he was much shorter than him, but when he got closer, this person was almost the same height as him. Xiaohua knew he was tall, half a head taller than the average person. If that person was the same height as him, there was no reason for him to look short just now. Oh, this is the cloak's effect, Xiaohua suddenly realized. Right at this moment, perhaps because Xiaohua had been staring at him for too long, the cultivator sensed something and slightly tilted his head under the cloak. Immediately, two cold gazes shot out like sharp swords. Humph, a little fellow at the second level of qi condensation, what are you looking at? Be careful or I'll take your life. That voice was very hoarse and at the same time cold, as if this wasn't Jinghua City, Xiaohua's life would be taken by him at any time. Xiaohua shuddered and quickly lowered his head, saying repeatedly, "Senior, please calm down. Junior didn't do it on purpose, please calm down." Humph, that cultivator didn't say much. His footsteps were like moving clouds and flowing water, and his height also slowly changed. Not long after, he walked far away. Xiaohua lowered his head and looked at that person from the corner of his eyes. He sighed and was about to raise his head when a voice rang out again. "Fellow Taoist." Xiaohua jumped in fright. That voice was right next to his ear, and he almost jumped up. He hurriedly turned around and saw that the old man who was still dozing off just now had already woken up. He had a signature smile on his face, and was quietly standing behind him. "Senior." Xiaohua saw that the old man was already a fourth-layer qi refinement cultivator, so he didn't dare to be negligent and immediately cupped his hands in greeting. "I don't dare. Fellow Taoist, did you come to visit this small shop?" Even though the old man saw that Xiaohua's cultivation was only at the second level of the qi refinement realm, he didn't dare to slight him. He put on a smile and said, "Fellow Taoist, don't underestimate this small shop. It's the only shop that my Fujian faction has set up in Jinghua City. Inside are all yellow talismans refined by the elders of my Fujian faction. I guarantee that they're genuine and cheap." Xiaohua's forehead was slightly sweating. He was indeed not used to having a cultivator with a higher cultivation than him lowering his posture like this in front of him. "Senior, can Junior go in and take a look?" Xiaohua probed. "Of course. Please, fellow Taoist, come in." The old man quickly got out of the way. However, he still looked at Xiaohua strangely and smiled apologetically. "Fellow Taoist, there's no need to call me senior. My surname is Bai. Just call me fellow Taoist Bai." Xiaohua nodded and said with a smile, "My surname is Xiao." "Fellow Taoist Xiao, please come in." Xiaohua first looked at some of the yellow talismans placed on the stalls around the shop. There were fireball talismans, earth thorn talismans, ice seal talismans and other normal yellow talismans. There were also some yellow talismans that he had never seen before. However, these yellow talismans looked very crude, and the runes on them were very shallow. Presumably, they were some low-level goods. After entering the shop, the space inside was actually very large. It was far from how cramped it looked from the outside. All kinds of strange yellow talismans were placed on the four walls of this space. There were about a dozen of each type of yellow talisman. They were quietly placed within the pale white brilliance on the walls. That brilliance reflected the appearance of the yellow talismans. Moreover, it was magnified by a lot. Xiaohua didn't need to get very close to see it extremely clearly. Xiaohua wasn't very proficient in yellow talismans. He just casually stood in front of a type of yellow talisman. Without waiting for him to carefully examine it, the old man immediately said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, do you want to buy this Earth Escape talisman? Isn't this a yellow talisman unique to my Fujian faction?" "Earth Escape talisman?" Xiaohua stared blankly and blurted out, "Earth Escape? Isn't that one of the 5 elements escape arts?" When the old man heard this, he was clearly even more stunned than Xiaohua. His expression froze for a moment. And then his smile became even wider. Oh, my fellow Taoist Xiao actually knows about the 5 elements escape arts. It seems like this old man's eyes were blind. I even thought that fellow Taoist was some wandering cultivator. So it turns out that you're a disciple of a famous sect. Xiao Hua's eyes turned and he said with a slight smile. I wouldn't dare. I just occasionally heard my teacher mention it. I wonder if this Earth Escape Talisman. Oh, I'll let fellow Taoist Xiao know. This Earth Escape Talisman is still different from the legendary Earth Escape Talisman. The old man's face was a bit embarrassed. My faction's previous generation elder also incidentally obtained a remnant book of the Earth Escape art. Only then did he figure out this Earth Escape Talisman himself. It's Earth Escape Talisman and Earth Escape Talisman of other sects. The effect is about the same. Please dispel my confusion, fellow Taoist Bai. The legendary Earth Escape art can escape underground. As long as there's earth, it can be like a flying technique, unhindered and unhindered. It's said that the 5 elements sect's true Earth Escape Talisman also has the effect of Earth Escape Talisman. It's just that the distance and depth are different. As the old man spoke, he stretched out his hand and took out the Earth Escape Talisman, and he handed it over to Xiao Hua. But my talisman John Sec's Earth Escape Talisman, because it's a remnant book of the Earth Escape art that they've comprehended, so, it can only hide a cultivator's body underground. Within a radius of several tens of kilometers, the cultivator can move freely. But if the cultivator escapes too far, they can't. Of course, this Earth Escape Talisman of my sect has an advantage that others can't. It's able to conceal a cultivator's aura and pressure, guaranteeing that it won't be discovered by cultivators of the same realm. As Xiaohua listened, he carefully examined the Earth Escape Talisman in his hand. This was an earthen yellow talisman, and its texture was extremely soft. When held in his hand, it was like silk. He only needed to use his hand to touch it, and he knew that this was absolutely not a yellow talisman that he'd seen in the past. On the yellow talisman, there were numerous talismans visible to the naked eye, and they were abnormally exquisite. Even though they hadn't reached the stage of being sentient, strands of spiritual energy were emitted from the talisman from time to time, indicating that this yellow talisman was also extremely rare. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. Who knew how many spirit stones this kind of yellow talisman would cost? So how could he afford it? Sure enough, that old man smiled again and said, even though this is a middle-grade yellow talisman, its effect is comparable to a high-grade one, and its price is only 1 middle-grade spirit stone. It's very cheap and good. If fellow Taoist Xiao were to buy it, you could use it to save your life in times of danger. Seeing that the old man's misunderstanding was gradually deepening, Xiao Hua didn't dare to look at it any longer, and returned the Earth Escape Talisman to the old man. That old man was clearly somewhat disappointed. After returning the Earth Escape Talisman to its original place, he politely asked, fellow Taoist Xiao, what kind of yellow talisman do you want to look at? This. Fellow Taoist Bai, do you accept yellow talismans here? Xiao Hua thought for a moment, but still braced himself and said it. N. The old man's brows wrinkled, and the smile on his face gradually disappeared. Fellow Taoist Xiao, are you making fun of me? My Fujian sect specializes in making yellow talismans, so how could we possibly go and buy other people's yellow talismans? So it's like that. Xiao Hua was somewhat embarrassed. Thinking about it, that's right. They originally specialized in making yellow talismans, so if you went to their shop to sell yellow talismans, wouldn't that be slapping their faces? Thinking that he couldn't come to their shop for nothing, Xiao Hua smiled apologetically and said, does fellow Taoist Bai have any fireball talismans here? N. The middle-grade fireball talismans are over there. The old man's face revealed a trace of a smile, and he used his hand to point in front of him. What about low-grade ones? Xiao Hua couldn't possibly buy a middle-grade fireball talisman. They're outside. The old man's attitude started to become cold. N. Xiao Hua responded and walked out first. His eyes looked around, and after searching once, his eyes suddenly lit up. Coincidentally, next to the low-grade fireball talisman, there really was a stack of blank messaging talismans. Xiao Hua ignored the old man and quickly walked over. He picked up the messaging talisman and carefully examined it. Upon seeing this, Although the old man was somewhat disappointed, he still clenched his teeth and said, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, this messaging talisman is also a refined product of my Fujian sect. 1 low-grade spirit stone. This old man can make the decision and give you 100 of them. What do you think?" Xiaohua didn't respond. He first carefully examined the messaging talisman paper, then looked at the talisman characters on it. Only then did he understand. He raised his head and said, "This kind of low-grade messaging talisman, I'm afraid it's not even comparable to a low-grade one. Fellow Taoist, I actually want such a high price?" The old man was somewhat tongue-tied, but he didn't appear embarrassed in the slightest. He said, "Messaging talismans, these kinds of daily yellow talismans, are the most lowly. Generally, they're refined by themselves. Who would come to my shop to buy them? Only low-level cultivators, because their magic power is insufficient and they want to send messages over a long distance, they would come to buy them. Even if my sect refined high-grade messaging talismans, they would still need to have enough spirit stones." Xiaohua nodded thoughtfully. He was somewhat dazed. When he passed by here earlier, he suddenly had an idea. He had some talisman paper and could refine messaging talismans. If he could use all of his magic power to refine messaging talismans, the quality of the messaging talismans he refined should be pretty good. If he could bring them here to sell, he would definitely be able to obtain some spirit stones. However, now it seemed that things weren't as simple as he thought. Soon after, Xiaohua's gaze fell on the fireball talismans. Those fireball talismans were similar to messaging talismans, and also appeared to be abnormally crude. Thus, he picked one up and asked, "What about this low-grade fireball talisman?" The old man said weakly, "If fellow Taoist Xiao is interested in buying, then 1 low-grade spirit stone for 10 talismans. Oh, 8 talismans. This is a special discount since it's fellow Taoist's first time here." Xiaohua nodded and said with a smile, "Since it's a discount, then just make it 10. Why be so stingy?" The old man sighed. 10 talismans it is. This old man hates bargaining the most. I'll listen to you." Xiaohua counted out 10 fireball talismans. Just as he was about to take out spirit stones from his bosom, he suddenly slapped his forehead and asked, "That's right, fellow Taoist Bai, what's the price of mid-grade and high-grade fireball talismans?" The old man's eyes lit up and he said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, 10 low-grade spirit stones for a mid-grade fireball talisman. As for high-grade fireball talismans, they cost 50 to 100 low-grade spirit stones." "Ah, so expensive?" Xiaohua actually didn't know whether it was expensive or not. He only said in astonishment, "It's not expensive, not expensive. Fellow Taoist Xiao doesn't know. Let's not talk about the power of the spiritual fire within this high-grade fireball talisman. Just the control of the spiritual fire and the difficulty of the technique are completely different from mid-grade spirit stones. Moreover, the greater the power of the spiritual fire, and the easier it is to control, the more expensive it is. 1 mid-grade spirit stone is nothing." Chapter 1298. "So it's like that." Xiaohua pinched his chin, thought for a moment, and said with a smile, "Then I have to go in and see what's the difference between middle grade and high grade. Fellow Taoist Xiao, there's no need to trouble yourself. I just happen to have both high-grade and middle-grade fireball talismans in my storage pouch." Seeing this, the old man beamed with joy. He slapped his storage pouch, and 2 extremely exquisite fireball talismans appeared in front of Xiaohua. Then he looked at Xiaohua from top to bottom, and said in a low voice, "I know that fellow Taoist Xiao went down the mountain with senior brother. It's all right as long as you bring your senior brother here. I will definitely give fellow Taoists some benefits." "Ha!" Xiaohua was slightly stunned, but his eyes immediately turned and he said in a low voice, "Fellow Taoist Bai, be careful with your words." As he spoke, his eyes carefully examined the 2 yellow talismans. Sure enough, the high-grade fireball talisman was exceptionally exquisite. Not only were the runes fine, but there was also a trace of spiritual energy contained between the fine lines. Even the talisman paper was clearly different. When he began to distinguish the difference between the runes on the 2 yellow talismans, he suddenly came to a realization. "Oh, I forgot. Messaging talismans, Don't use talisman ink or talisman brushes. The runes of these fireball talismans are drawn with talisman ink and talisman brushes. I don't even have these, how can I make talismans? Looking up again, sure enough, on the other side of the stall, there were some talisman ink and talisman brushes neatly arranged. After thinking for a while, Xiaohua didn't continue to ask. He carefully looked at the difference between the two yellow talismans and returned them to the old man, and said with a smile, I didn't take too many spirit stones for now, so I'll just take these fireball talismans. The old man didn't think it was strange. He took the yellow talismans from Xiaohua, put them away, and said with a smile, It's all right, I'll wait for fellow Taoist Xiao to come again. However, when Xiaohua handed over the middle-grade spirit stone, the old man's expression was somewhat splendid. Cough cough that. Fellow Taoist Xiao, I know that fellow Taoist doesn't want to reveal your identity while wearing a storage pouch, but can't fellow Taoist give I a low-grade spirit stone? For this middle-grade spirit stone, I have to give fellow Taoist 99 low-grade spirit stones. How will fellow Taoist take it? Oh, that's right. Xiaohua's face was embarrassed. This was something he had never thought of. Xiaohua's eyes swiveled and he laughed. Storage pouch. Sigh, I didn't say. Is there anything fellow Taoist doesn't use here? I will use these remaining spirit stones to exchange with fellow Taoist. The old man's face was slightly startled, and he couldn't help but smile bitterly. Fellow Taoist Xiao, you make it sound so easy. A storage bag is worth at least dozens of high-grade spirit stones. Fellow Taoist, this middle-grade spirit stone, how can it be exchanged? It seems that fellow Taoist Zhao's sect, storage pouches don't count for much. Xiaohua's face was slightly red as he sighed. He took out the fireball talisman from his bosom and said, Then there's no other way. Wait. Tomorrow I can't. I'll talk about it next time. When the old man heard this, his eyes turned slightly. He looked at the sky and said with a smile, I see. It must be quite difficult for fellow Taoist Xiao to come out. Since we are fated to meet, then I have to think of a way for fellow Taoist I. What method does fellow Taoist Bai have? Xiaohua was somewhat excited in his heart. Sure enough, he heard the old man say, I obtained a storage bag in my early years. Moreover, it's already worn out. If fellow Taoist doesn't mind, then you can take it first. I will only charge you 90 low-grade spirit stones. 90. Xiaohua shook his head. I only want to use it this time, and I actually have to spend 90 low-grade spirit stones. This business is really inappropriate. I won't exchange. Don't fellow Taoist Xiao. You also know that you don't lack any spirit stones, and you also don't care about some storage bag. But this storage bag is still a storage bag. That small storage bag can also be used. If you sell it in a specialized shop, it really can be sold for a lot of middle-grade spirit stones. I only want to make friends with fellow Taoist. That's why I bid like this. Forget it. Then 60. Xiaohua spread his hands to express his helplessness. Fellow Taoist Xiao, I usually don't haggle. 80. 70. If it's not possible, I will leave. Xiaohua reduced the price a little. Forget it. Then fellow Taoist should see you later. The old man shook his head with a helpless expression. Xiaohua also didn't know whether what he said was true or false. After thinking for a while, he put on an unhappy expression and waved his hand, saying, Forget it. Just treat it as I forming a good karma. 80 it is. The old man didn't have any expression. He seemed to think that this was a matter of course. He slightly smiled and turned around to enter the shop. Not long after, he came out with an ordinary storage bag in his hand and handed it to Xiaohua, saying, Fellow Taoist Xiao, there are 19 low-grade spirit stones inside. Please take a look. Xiaohua calmly took it. He didn't even look at it and said with a smile, It's only because there's no way to store spirit stones that I used this. Why go through so much trouble? Fellow Taoist Xiao, as the saying goes, don't show off your wealth. If fellow Taoist carries this kind of storage bag, I'm afraid you won't be remembered. I owe fellow Taoist by his right, this poor Taoist has learned. Xiaohua took the opportunity to place the storage pouch on his waist and patted it. From now on, This poor Taoist will use this. Hee. I will wait here for fellow Taoist Zhao's next visit, the old man said with a smile. And fellow Taoist Bai, don't worry. The next time I come, I will definitely give fellow Taoist a surprise. Xiaohua waved his hand and slowly walked out. After turning a corner, Xiaohua hurriedly opened the storage bag and thought to himself, this black-hearted shop owner won't give less than 1 spirit stone, right? When he opened the storage bag to take a look, he couldn't help but be dumbfounded. There were exactly 19 spirit stones in the storage bag, but the space inside the storage bag was really too small. Shang Huaming only had 2 storage bags. Xiaohua hadn't used Xiao Yuehong's storage bag, so he didn't know how big the space was. Xiaohua knew that Xiao Xianrui's storage bag should be 3 feet in size. And the one in Xiaohua's hand, let alone 3 feet, at best it was only 3 feet in size. It was naturally possible to put some spirit herbs, pills or spirit stones, but other things, don't talk about it. AI, you get what you pay for. 80 low-grade spirit stones, which is the price of a fireball talisman. How can it buy a proper storage bag? Xiaohua smiled bitterly, but then he snorted coldly. But this young master doesn't lack storage space. This kind of thing is just for decoration. As he spoke, he patted the storage bag, and a low-grade spirit stone appeared in his hand. He muttered, I don't know what the price of an inn is. Can 1 low-grade spirit stone stay for a night? Xiaohua was still too optimistic. How could 1 low-grade spirit stone stay in an inn for a night? He had asked all the small inns in the southwest direction, and it seemed that the cheapest one was 10 low-grade spirit stones for a night. Looking at the sky, Xiaohua also lost the intention to continue looking. He took 10 low-grade spirit stones and handed them to the inn, and was led to a room by a waiter without any cultivation. The waiter pushed the door open and invited Xiaohua in. He smiled and said, Immortal Elder, this room has already been set up with a formation. You only need to stick the yellow talisman on the counter on the door, and this formation will be activated. Other than Immortal Elder, no one else can enter or leave. Of course, this yellow talisman will automatically lose its effect after 24 hours. Immortal Elder, please come to the counter. And I know. Xiaohua waved his hand. When the waiter was about to withdraw, Xiaohua pretended to be indifferent and asked, Oh right, waiter, are there any spiritual herbs and medicinal pills nearby that can be bought? Immortal Elder knows that most of the things here are accommodation. The spiritual herbs and medicinal pills are all in the east of Jinghua City. However, for Immortal Elder's convenience, some large shops also opened a few small shops here. Aran is not far to the west, and it just so happens that there is a banyan grass shop. If you need ordinary medicinal pills, you can go there and take a look. Hee thanks, Xiaohua smiled and said. The waiter was somewhat flattered and hurriedly said, Immortal Elder is too polite. Soon after, he looked like he wanted to say something but hesitated. But a moment later, he bit his lips and said in a low voice, Immortal Elder in? What's wrong? Xiaohua had already seen the waiter's expression, and unconsciously became vigilant. That. Immortal Elder, do you have any healing pills? These words were said in a very low voice, but immediately after, the waiter didn't wait for Xiaohua to speak and hurriedly said, No, it's okay. I was just casually asking. Looking at that expression, it seemed like he had already been rejected 10,000 times. Hearing this, Xiaohua slightly wrinkled his brows. He knew that ever since he woke up, he hadn't seen any secular people. However, he also knew from Zhang Qingxiao's mouth that there were still a lot of secular people in this Xiaoyu continent. And in the eyes of cultivators, these people were simply like ants and would never be put in their eyes. Medicinal pills for healing injuries were also precious in the hearts of cultivators. How could he give it to this waiter just because he asked? If the waiter had some kind of spirit stones or the like, perhaps there would still be a trace of hope. However, Xiaohua still asked, What do you want to do with healing medicinal pills? You're not a cultivator? Seeing Xiaohua's inquiry, the waiter's face reddened, and there was a slight sadness in his eyes. He still bit his lips and said to Xiaohua, Immortal Elder knows my mother is seriously ill. I don't know how many doctors I've found, but they all couldn't cure her. There was a doctor who knew that I was working in this inn and gave me an idea. He said that the medicinal pills you immortals use might be effective. How long has your mother been ill? Xiaohua said warmly. How many people have you asked? Sigh, my mother has already been ill for as long as a year. I previously asked everyone I saw, but no one paid any attention to me. In the last 2 months, I already stopped asking. The waiter looked at Xiaohua pitifully and said, I know that this medicinal pill is precious. Immortal Elder. If Immortal Elder has extra, just treat it as giving one to me. I'll work like an ox or a horse to repay Immortal Elder. Xiaohua pinched his chin and looked at the waiter. He didn't know whether he should believe this waiter or not. If what this waiter said was false, he was only a small cultivator at the 2nd level of qi condensation. If he was targeted by others, it would be troublesome. You already haven't asked anyone for it for a long time. Why are you asking me for it again? Xiaohua asked with interest. To be continued. Chapter 1299. I won't hide it from Senior Immortal. The southwest area of Jinghua City is relatively barren. Only those with slightly lower cultivation come here. Generally, those who come to the inn are middle-aged people. Of course, there are also very old people. There aren't many young people like Senior Immortal. Presumably, Senior Immortal's cultivation is profound. Since Senior Immortal's cultivation is profound, then you must have a lot of immortal pills. Seeing that there was hope, the waiter's face flushed red. He stammered, actually, the most important thing is that the other Senior Immortals don't even care about this lowly one. Senior Immortal actually said thank you to this lowly one. Ah, so it's like that. Xiaohua didn't expect that saying the word thank you would cause trouble. Alas, if it was the truth, he would accept it. Who told him to really have a healing parasol pill? But who could guarantee that this waiter's words weren't false? What should I do? Xiaohua was a bit embarrassed. Should he give it or not? Suddenly, Xiaohua's eyes lit up. He seemed to have thought of something and a smile appeared on his face. Without the slightest hesitation, he slightly turned around and took out a parasol pill from the space behind the waiter's back. Then, he patted his storage bag and handed the parasol pill to the waiter. He said with a smile, seeing that you are a filial son, how can I not help you? This is a healing pill. Take it. It can be considered a meeting. Ah. The waiter was even more surprised. He stared at the pill in disbelief. His hands trembled, but he didn't dare to reach out to take it. Xiaohua smiled and stuffed the jade bottle into the waiter's hand. He turned around and sized up the room. The room wasn't big, only 1 zhang in size. Apart from the necessary decorations, there was nothing else. It was abnormally simple and crude. Senior Immortal. Thank you for your great kindness. This lowly one is called Fanriguan. If you need anything, please don't hesitate to tell this lowly one. As long as this lowly one can do it, this lowly one will definitely satisfy you. Behind him, the waiter knelt on the ground and said very sincerely. Xiaohua hurriedly helped him up and said with a smile, this is only an ordinary healing pill. It is used by cultivators to treat internal and external injuries. I don't know if this pill is effective or not. Don't thank me like this. Then he continued. However, this is eyes-only pill. As for the rest, even if you break your head, you won't get it. As for what it is, it's nothing. I'm also new here. Oh, by the way, is there anyone selling yellow talismans? Talisman paper, talisman ink, etc.? He knew nothing about Jinghua City, so he had a lot of questions to ask. Yes, there are 2 beside the shop that I told you about. However, you'd better go to the one in the east. Although the shop is small, I heard that the owner is a disciple of some sect. He's very honest and won't bully customers. By the way, the shop that sells medicinal pills and herbs that I mentioned just now, although it is close to the inn, but the owner is not very good. If you have any business, you should walk a few more steps. Walk down the street, there is a shop called Mo Ling Chao Tang. Although the shop is very small, but the reputation of the immortals there is very good. The waiter quickly recommended. This Wu Yao pill is really useful. Xiaohua was happy in his heart. Then he activated the so-called formation in the room and retreated. He said with a smile, I'll have to trouble the waiter to point out the direction for I don't dare. Immortal elder, this way please. The waiter carefully put the Wuxiao pill into his pocket and then said embarrassedly, Immortal elder, I haven't asked for your Dharma name yet? Dharma name? Xiaohua pursed his lips and said with a smile, I's cultivation is shallow. How can I have a Dharma name? I's surname is Xiao. Oh, Taoist Xiao, I understand. Without waiting for Xiaohua to finish speaking, the waiter immediately cried out in joy. Taoist Xiao? Xiaohua smiled and secretly said, This Dharma name seems pretty good. The waiter led Xiaohua out of the inn. He originally wanted to lead Xiaohua over, but how could Xiaohua let him go? He only let the waiter go back, and went himself. At this time, the sky had already turned dark. On the street, there were a lot fewer cultivators, and it was a bit cold and cheerless. Xiaohua looked around and walked towards a place not too far in front of him. He walked towards a shop that didn't look very big. However, after walking a few steps, a cloaked cultivator walked out from the inn at the side. This person's cloak was different in color and style from the one Xiaohua saw before. But it gave Xiaohua the same strange feeling. That person's cultivation, face, figure, and so on were all covered by this cloak. Not a trace of it could be seen. Xiaohua couldn't figure out this person's cultivation, but he knew that it was definitely higher than his. He hurriedly dodged to the side and let that person go first. That cloaked person walked out from the inn. He didn't even look at Xiaohua and directly walked past him, walking into the distance. The instant this person walked past Xiaohua, Xiaohua stole a glance. That person's height was also the same as his. This cloak, there's definitely something wrong with it. Xiaohua was already certain. I'll go back and ask that waiter. After seeing that person whose face and cultivation he couldn't see calmly walk away, Xiaohua once again moved towards the shop not too far away. The shop really wasn't too big. Just like what the waiter said. There was also an old man with white hair and beard inside. Beside him were several youths whose cultivation was only around the second layer of qi refining. They were greeting customers. Although it was already dusk, there were still a lot of people inside the shop. After looking around, Xiaohua walked away. First, that waiter already said that there was a better shop ahead. Second, he didn't want to attract the attention of others. Following the direction pointed out by the waiter, he walked for a while and arrived at an inconspicuous place. Sure enough, there was another small shop. That small shop was even smaller than the shabby yellow talisman shop he saw before. It only had a small door that could only allow one person to enter and exit at a time. There was also a shabby plaque on the door that said Mo Spirit Herb Store. Xiaohua wasn't in a hurry to go forward. He stood at a corner not too far away from Mo Spirit Herb Store and quietly watched for a moment. He couldn't see the situation inside the shop from the outside, but during the time that Xiaohua was standing there, no one came in or out. Moreover, there weren't many people on this street. Occasionally, a few people would hurriedly walk by and they wouldn't even glance at Xiaohua. And here it is. Xiaohua was very satisfied. If it wasn't for the waiter's guidance, he really wouldn't have been able to find this place. After looking left and right and making sure that there wasn't anyone in the way, Xiaohua tidied up his clothes and steadily walked over. As soon as he stepped into Mo Spirit Herb Store, Xiaohua saw a row of black lacquered wood counters. The counters were only about half the height of a person. Behind the counters was a wall that flickered with a faint brilliance. The inside of the shop was cold and cheerless. There was only a short old man with grizzled hair and a thin face. He held a thick book in his hand and was leaning against the counter. He seemed to be reading it with great interest under the brilliance of the wall. When the old man heard the sound of footsteps, he raised his head with an astonished expression. However, when he saw Xiaohua's cultivation level, although he didn't show any disdain, he still lowered his head and kept his gaze on the pages of the book. His body that was leaning against the counter didn't even move. Xiaohua opened his eyes wide and sized up the shop that only had one person. His gaze then fell on the old man. The old man's cultivation level was around the 5th layer of the qi refining realm. He wore a shabby Taoist robe and held a book in one hand and his goatee in the other. He had a rather complacent appearance. Cough cough, Xiaohua coughed twice and approached the old man. The old man rolled his eyes and moved his gaze away from the book. He coldly asked, "Fellow Taoist, what brings you here?" Xiaohua wrinkled his brows and said in a deep voice, "Is this how fellow Taoist welcomes guests?" My sect opened a shop in Jinghua City, so we naturally have to welcome guests. But if fellow Taoist is a loose cultivator who intends to take advantage of others, I won't welcome you." The old man lowered his eyelids and no longer paid attention to Xiaohua. This is what Fan Riguan meant by a good reputation. Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After thinking for a moment, Xiaohua asked, "How did fellow Taoist know that I'm a loose cultivator?" The old man slanted his eyes at him and sneered. "Around 20 years old, and only at the second layer of the qi refining realm. If you were in a cultivation sect, not to mention a large sect, even my Emoling sect, would only be a boy growing grass. How could we let you leave the mountain? Besides, the sky is about to turn dark. If you weren't a loose cultivator, you would have already been together with your master, who would stroll around like you." When Xiaohua heard this, he unconsciously didn't know whether to laugh or cry. These two reasons were really too far-fetched. This is what you mean by a good reputation." Xiaohua sneered. "I wrongly accused someone of recommending your Mo Ling herb store." "Recommending? Which loose cultivator? Did you take advantage of me?" The old man closed the book and placed it on the counter as he sneered. "Took advantage?" Xiaohua immediately came to his senses and cupped his hands. "Junior's surname is Xiao. I was introduced by the inn's Fan Riguan." "Fan Riguan? That silly boy who asked for medicine for his mother?" The old man was clearly stunned. "Yes, it's him." Xiaohua nodded. Fan Riguan asked for medicine for his mother. Of course, his filial piety is commendable. What's there to be silly about? Soon after, Xiaohua looked at the counter and sneered. On the contrary, some cultivators clearly have a lot of medicinal pills, but they don't extend their hands to help. They even call others silly. What do you know? The old man almost jumped up. He pointed his finger at Xiaohua's nose and said, "The physique of a secular person can only use the medicinal herbs of a secular person. How can the medicinal pills of a cultivator be taken by a secular person?" I don't know where that fan brat heard it from, but he insisted on asking for an immortal pill for his mother. First of all, my medicinal pills are public property of the sect. I alone can't make the decision. Even if I gave him the medicinal pills, there are countless medicinal pills here. Which one would I give to him? Even if I gave it to him, if his mother took it, wouldn't it immediately disappear? It would be better if she didn't take it. Hearing this, Xiaohua's heart thumped. He cursed inwardly. How could he have forgotten about this matter? Seeing Xiaohua's expression greatly change, the old man resentfully said, "Could it be that some little loose cultivator with a conscience gave him the medicinal pills that he scrimped on?" Chapter 1300. When Xiaohua heard this, he felt great regret. His face was ashen as he cupped his hands and said, "Junior is a little loose cultivator with a great conscience. Junior has disturbed you." Saying this, Xiaohua didn't dare to delay and turned to leave the store. You really gave the medicinal pill to him?" The old man was clearly stunned. His figure fluttered as he flew out from the counter and blocked in front of Xiaohua. He asked curiously, "You're a little loose cultivator. Even a medicinal pill is difficult to obtain. How could you so easily give it to a secular brat you don't know?" "Senior, please step aside. Junior will quickly go and retrieve the medicinal pill. Don't make a big mistake." Xiaohua was a little anxious. "No hurry. Kid Fan lives in the west of the city. It's a day's journey from here. If he wants to go back, he'll have to wait until tomorrow morning. You can go back tonight and ask him for it." The old man's face had eased a lot. "Oh, so it's like that." Xiaohua breathed a sigh of relief. He looked at the old man and said, "Although we are cultivators, we were also raised by our parents. Putting ourselves in their shoes, if Junior's parents were sick, as long as there was a glimmer of hope, Junior would fight for it. What Fan Riguan did was also Junior's doing." "Good." The old man clapped and said, "I didn't expect loose cultivators to have such a strange person like fellow Taoist. This is the first time I've seen one. If other loose cultivators had half of fellow Taoists' kindness, I wouldn't be cheated so often. Xiaohua knew what others thought of loose cultivators, and didn't want to say anything. He cupped his hands and said, Senior should let Junior go back first. If Junior doesn't get the parasol pill back, Junior's heart won't be at ease. Parasol pill? The old man was stunned. Then he waved his hand and said with a smile, No matter, no matter. The parasol pill is only a low-grade medicinal pill. It only has some special effects in treating internal and external injuries. It doesn't have too strong of a medicinal effect. If a secular person takes it, it won't harm their life. You can rest assured about this. Really? Xiaohua said happily. Yes, I have cultivated medicine and refined pills for dozens of years. Would I lie to you? The old man said with a smile. That's good, that's good. Don't do bad things with good intentions. Xiaohua was relieved. Oh, fellow Taoist Xiao, are you here to buy some pills? The old man asked with a smile. His attitude was completely different from before. For fellow Taoist Xiao's kindness, I can give you the profits. Thank you, Senior. I still haven't asked for Senior's Dharma name. Xiaohua said. What Dharma name? My surname is Liang. You can call me fellow Taoist Liang. The old man replied straightforwardly. I don't dare. Senior Liang, this junior is not here to buy pills. Xiaohua looked at the old man and said, This junior has some spiritual grasses that I want to sell to Senior. Spirit grass? The old man wasn't surprised. He only shook his head slightly and said, My Mo Ling sect doesn't lack any spiritual herbs. If it's pills, I can consider it. But spiritual herbs, don't even think about it. What if it's a spiritual herb that's over 100 years old? Xiaohua finally asked. Over 100 years? The old man frowned and said, That also depends on what kind of spiritual herb it is. If it's absorption fruit, exquisite grass, and the like, I definitely want it without hesitation. But if it's other spiritual herbs, I can't guarantee it. In the space behind Xiaohua's head, all the spiritual herbs were already close to 200 years old. Even the exquisite grass had sprouted. However, spiritual herbs like absorption fruit and exquisite grass were used to refine Peiyuan pill and foundation establishment pill. Not to mention that Xiaohua himself had them. Even if he wanted to take them out, he might not necessarily have the courage to do so. Xiaohua smiled bitterly and said, Senior Liang must be joking. This junior just happened to obtain some spiritual herbs in a remote place. I only wanted to exchange them for some spirit stones. How could I have such precious things? And okay, fellow Taoist Xiao, take them out and let me have a look. If it's possible, I will fulfill your wish. The old man didn't hold back and said with a smile. Okay, Xiaohua patted the abnormally small storage pouch on his waist. More than 10 different kinds of spiritual herbs were taken out. They were the ones that he had already chosen. Seeing these spiritual herbs, the old man's eyes lit up. He looked at them one by one, and a trace of a smile unconsciously appeared on his face. Seeing the old man smile, Xiaohua also let out a sigh of relief in his heart. He secretly said, They must be pleasing to my eyes. Sure enough, when the old man finished looking, he smiled and said, Not bad. Fellow Taoist Xiao, although these spiritual herbs aren't the main ingredients, they're valuable in terms of age. Even in my Mo Ling sect, spiritual herbs of this age are rare. Fellow Taoist Xiao, you're lucky. Hee, I don't dare. This junior has lived for so long, but this is also the first time I've encountered such a thing. Xiaohua said modestly, I wonder if these spiritual herbs, fellow Taoist Xiao, don't worry. Although these spiritual herbs aren't valuable, they can still be considered rare. I don't even come across them once a month. How can I not accept them? The old man said with a smile, I think fellow Taoist Xiao also knows that the main ingredients of a 100-years-old plant should be a mid-grade spirit stone. Although this spiritual herb isn't the main ingredient, it's a 180-years-old plant. I can also take out a mid-grade spirit stone. What do you think? Ah, a mid-grade spirit stone? Xiaohua's mouth opened. He was extremely pleasantly surprised. He didn't think that a 100-years-old spiritual herb would be so valuable. Seeing that Xiaohua was pleasantly surprised, The old man also smiled and said, "Didn't you just say that fellow Taoist Xiao was lucky? Among your spiritual herbs, several of them are supplementary ingredients for my Mo Ling sect's special pills. This kind of aged spiritual herb is exactly what my sect needs. If it were other sects, they might not be able to pay such a high price." Xiaohua slightly nodded and secretly said, "As expected, their reputation is pretty good. Then, I'll have to ask Senior Liang to pay the spirit stone," Xiaohua replied. "Fellow Taoist Xiao won't raise the price?" The old man was obviously stunned. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. How could there be such a person? Even letting others raise the price? "No, Senior Liang is so frank. Junior will also put myself in your shoes." Xiaohua cupped his hands and said, "What a good, put yourself in my shoes." The old man sighed with emotion. If all the loose cultivators were like you, they wouldn't speaking up to hear. He didn't say anything else. He only waved his hand and put all the spiritual herbs into his storage pouch. Then he took out nearly 20 mid-grade spirit stones and placed them on the counter. He said with a smile, "These are ice spirit stones. Fellow Taoist Xiao, please take care of them." Why are there 2 more? Xiaohua asked curiously. Are there still cultivators in this world who don't like having too many spirit stones?" The old man patted Xiaohua's shoulder and said, "Why aren't you taking care of them? If others see this, it won't be good." "Yes, Junior understands." Xiaohua's heart trembled. He waved his hand and put away the spirit stones. Then he looked at the old man. "It's nothing. Your spiritual herbs are worth more spirit stones than these. Even I can get some benefits from them. Didn't you say it already? Putting yourself in my shoes, I think it's appropriate to give you more." The old man blinked his eyes at Xiaohua. "So it's like that." Xiaohua smiled and cupped his hands. "Then, Junior won't be polite." No need, no need." The old man waved his hand and said, "Those can be considered a small token of appreciation from I. If fellow Taoist comes across such good spiritual herbs in the future, bring them all to I. I will give you an even better price." "Yes, if Junior has good luck again, I'll definitely come and trade with Senior Liang again," Xiaohua said with a smile. "However, he won't come again. Good luck once can be explained, but if it happens again, who would believe it?" "Oh right, Junior has a question that I don't know if I should ask or not," Xiaohua said with a smile. What do you think?" The old man didn't answer directly. Xiaohua scratched his head and said embarrassedly, "Just now, I heard Senior Liang say that you know how to refine medicinal pills. Junior wants to ask, where can I get a pill furnace?" Junior also wants to learn how to refine medicinal pills." "You? Refine medicinal pills?" The old man almost laughed out loud. After holding it in for a long time, he shook his head and said, "I'm not laughing at you. Fellow Taoist Xiao, you've only just reached the 2nd level of qi refining. Don't say that it's impossible to buy a pill furnace from a market or a shop. Although that thing costs several tens of top-grade spirit stones, it's still a priceless item. Even if you get a pill furnace, with your cultivation level, can you refine medicinal pills? I advise you to wait until you reach the 4th level of qi refining before thinking about this problem. Moreover, I refine medicinal pills. That's a secret technique passed down in my Mo Ling sect. It doesn't require any divine sense. You're a loose cultivator. Where did you get the technique? Loose cultivators refine medicinal pills? I've never heard of it." Xiaohua's face was like water. After waiting for the old man to finish speaking, he cupped his hands and said, "Many thanks for Senior Liang's guidance." Junior was enlightened after hearing it. Alas, this idea is really a bit excessive. You're still young. In the future, you might have a chance to find a sect to rely on. Maybe you'll have some good luck," the old man said with a smile. "And Junior understands." Xiaohua nodded. Soon after, he looked at the sky outside and cupped his hands in farewell. The old man also sent him off, a rare sight. Only after watching Xiaohua walk towards the tavern did he turn around and return to Mo Ling Herb Store with a smile. Xiaohua left Mo Ling Herb Store and walked along the same path back to the tavern. After walking for a while, he slightly leaned to the side and didn't see anything unusual behind him. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief. The old man gave him a very good impression, but he didn't dare to lower his guard. Nearly 20 mid-grade spirit stones were enough to arouse the greed of others. After standing quietly for a moment, Xiaohua finally walked towards the yellow talisman shop recommended by Fan Riguan. The yellow talisman shop was also very small, even smaller than the one Xiaohua went to before. However, the inside of the shop could be considered lively. Several third and fourth layer aura refining cultivators were choosing items inside while discussing something. In the shop, apart from a middle-aged man with a full beard, there was only a boy in his teens who was also in the second layer of the aura refining realm accompanying several cultivators buying yellow talismans. That middle-aged man was very sturdy and looked very fierce. His cultivation level was around the 10th layer of the aura refining realm. When he saw Xiaohua enter and saw that the boy wasn't free, he personally stepped forward and calmly asked, "Fellow Taoist, are you here to buy yellow talismans?" "Greetings, Senior. Junior is here to buy some talisman ink, talisman paper and talisman brushes." Xiaohua cupped his hands respectfully and said, "And you aren't an individual cultivator?" That middle-aged man was slightly stunned, but he immediately came to his senses and said with a smile, Sorry, I spoke too much. It's fine." Xiaohua casually waved his hand. "Oh, the items needed to make yellow talismans are all here. Fellow Taoist, please choose." That middle-aged man led Xiaohua to the other side. Sure enough, under the wall, all kinds of talisman ink, talisman paper and talisman brushes were neatly piled up. Chapter 1301. Why are there so many? Xiaohua looked at the various talisman brushes and other items, and couldn't help but reveal his stinginess, and he felt slightly dazzled. Xiaohua pretended to ponder as his gaze roamed through these talisman papers for a long time, and then he said with a smile, "Senior, seems to have never introduced the price to me." The middle-aged man was slightly stunned. Then he reluctantly stepped forward and pointed with his finger as he said with a smile, "Even though my talisman refining school isn't large, we've always conducted fair transactions. These talisman papers, talisman brushes, and talisman ink are the same price as the other shops in Jinghua City. Since fellow Taoist isn't at ease, then I'll carefully explain it to you." After that, his gaze swept past Xiaohua as he said, "This low-grade talisman paper costs 100 low-grade spirit stones per piece, mid-grade talisman paper costs 10 low-grade spirit stones per piece, and high-grade talisman paper costs 1 low-grade spirit stone per piece. Over there, a piece of low-grade talisman ink costs 1 low-grade spirit stone. A piece of mid-grade talisman ink costs 1 mid-grade spirit stone. And as for high-grade talisman ink, 1 high-grade spirit stone can only be exchanged for 1 piece." "Ah, so expensive?" Xiaohua was slightly surprised, as he never imagined that the price of talisman ink would be so outrageous. "Then talisman brushes?" The middle-aged man's tone was indifferent. "Talisman brushes, low-grade talisman brushes cost 50 low-grade spirit stones per piece, mid-grade talisman brushes cost 20 mid-grade spirit stones per piece, and high-grade talisman brushes cost 10 high-grade spirit stones per piece." This Xiaohua was depressed. He'd just obtained close to 20 mid-grade spirit stones and felt that his pockets were already plentiful, so he had the courage to enter the yellow talisman shop. But he never imagined that it was only more expensive and not the most expensive. Thinking about it, those 100-year-old spirit herbs of his couldn't even compare to these talisman ink and talisman brushes. The middle-aged man was slightly surprised when he saw Xiaohua remain silent. Then he thought for a moment and said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist, perhaps you want to rely on refining yellow talismans to make a breakthrough in your cultivation? However, talisman crafting isn't comparable to cultivation. These talisman papers, talisman ink, and talisman brushes all require the calm refinement of my talisman refining school's disciples. Especially the high-grade talisman brushes and ink. They're the painstaking efforts of the elders and seniors of my school. If they're sold cheaply, then how can we face our seniors? If fellow Taoist is curious, then there's no harm in purchasing some low-grade spirit stones. Then, you can carefully ask the masters of the school's talisman crafting. Perhaps you'll make some progress and it's beneficial to your cultivation." Then the middle-aged man turned, as if he didn't intend to pay any more attention to Xiaohua. Senior Xiaohua immediately called out to the middle-aged man and said with a smile, I want to buy some low-grade talisman paper, talisman ink, and talisman brushes. Senior, please help me choose. This is my first time crafting talismans. Oh, okay. What attribute? What attribute is to talisman Taoist? TTBBB refined Taoist Taoist? Xiao Xiao Titi. Teat speak. Spirit stones to the time to the inn. The middle-aged man nodded slightly, then pointed at several places and said, this talisman paper, this talisman ink, and this talisman brush, they're quite suitable for crafting spirit stones. After he finished speaking, he hesitated a little and said, actually, if fellow Taoist is purely curious, then why don't you first buy some talisman papers with no attribute and ask the seniors of your school for advice? You can practice refining some simple messaging talismans first. Once you're proficient in refining, then you can refine low-grade fireball talismans. Only then, you won't waste these talisman crafting materials. Thank you, Senior. Junior already has some talisman papers, enough to refine messaging talismans. Senior, please help me choose some. Xiaohua said with a smile. Then how many do you intend to buy? Seeing that his persuasion was ineffective, the middle-aged man asked. Junior asked for a mid-grade spirit stone from my master. Senior, please give it to me. Xiaohua naturally wouldn't choose it himself, so he could only leave it to the middle-aged man. At this moment, the people in the shop had already put the yellow talismans they bought into their storage pouches, and were in the process of handing over the spirit stones. The middle-aged man had no choice but to personally choose the talisman papers for Xiaohua, a second-layer qi refining cultivator. Xiaohua was also a bit uncomfortable, but he didn't understand these things. Moreover, successfully crafting fireball talismans was related to whether or not he could join Heaven Forsaken, so he couldn't be careless. The middle-aged man's movements were very fast. In a short moment, he finished selecting the items and handed them over, saying, fellow Taoist, take a look and see if they're suitable. Xiaohua smiled and received them, then put them into his storage pouch. He took out a mid-grade spirit stone and handed it back, saying, I'll have to trouble Senior. If it wasn't for the fact that Junior doesn't understand, I definitely wouldn't dare to trouble you. No matter. Seeing Xiaohua being so respectful, the man didn't say anything else. He waved his hand, smiled at Xiaohua, then turned around and left. The second-layer qi refining boy had already sent off the customers. He turned around and quickly walked in front of Xiaohua. He cupped his hands and said, Is there anything else I can do for fellow Taoist? Looking at this boy who was younger than him, but also had a higher cultivation level, Xiaohua's expression really didn't look too good. He cupped his hands and said embarrassedly, Thank you, fellow Taoist, there's nothing else. Then, I'll see fellow Taoist out. The boy was still polite. He didn't show the slightest bit of arrogance just because Xiaohua's cultivation level was lower than his. Xiaohua smiled and walked out of the shop. Just as he walked halfway, he suddenly frowned. He turned around and asked, Fellow Taoist, may I ask if your shop is buying refined yellow talismans? The boy stared blankly. Vigilance appeared on his face. He first shook his head, but then he turned around and looked at the middle-aged man behind him. The middle-aged man's expression didn't change. He raised his eyelids and said, My humble shop sells yellow talismans. We naturally won't accept ordinary low-grade or mid-grade yellow talismans. If there's a senior in your sect who refined high-grade yellow talismans, I might consider it. The middle-aged man clearly regarded Xiaohua as a disciple of a cultivation sect with a senior who knew how to refine talismans. Xiaohua slightly nodded. He was extremely disappointed in his heart. He secretly said, I just want to earn some copper coins to spend. Why is it so hard? Copper coins? Xiaohua immediately stared blankly. It should be broken spirit stones. If fellow Taoist has a high-grade talisman, there's no harm in showing it to my master. Maybe he'll give you a good price. The boy saw Xiaohua was silent and said with a smile, Oh, generally speaking, how many spirit stones is a high-grade yellow talisman worth? Xiaohua casually asked while walking. It's hard to say. It also depends on the attribute of the yellow talisman. The boy also casually replied. If it's a fireball talisman, freezing talisman, or other offensive yellow talismans, it's around 40 to 80 low-grade spirit stones. If it's a defensive yellow talisman like an iron cloak talisman or a Vajra talisman, it's around 1 to 2 mid-grade spirit stones. This depends on the quality of the yellow talisman. And I understand. Xiao Hua silently nodded. His grand plan of relying on making yellow talismans to make a fortune was completely sealed. How sad. It seems that I can only use spirit herbs to exchange for spirit stones. After leaving the yellow talisman shop, the sky had already darkened. There weren't too many people on the street. Xiao Hua didn't dare to be negligent and quickly walked towards the inn. However, he hadn't walked a few steps when he met a person wearing a strange cloak. He very abruptly appeared from the side, giving Xiao Hua a fright. He immediately stopped and carefully stood to the side. Only after that person left did Xiao Hua slightly tilt his head. He looked at the somewhat fuzzy back and muttered, "Why did we meet again?" "What did you meet, little fellow?" A very wooden voice sounded from behind Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua was greatly alarmed and jumped up. When he turned around to look, a cloaked person appeared behind him like a ghost. Senior. Junior. Junior saw that it was already late and hurriedly ran towards the inn. But just now I saw a senior who looked like you very calmly coming to the street, so I was extremely astonished. Xiao Hua stuttered and didn't hide anything. Quickly hide back in the inn, little fellow. The cloaked person laughed loudly. His body suddenly floated up and quickly flew forward. Isn't flying prohibited? Xiao Hua was stunned. However, he only had doubts in his heart. He didn't dare to stay any longer, and quickly returned along the road he came from. He knew that he couldn't remember the direction. If it was even late at night, it would be even more difficult to find the inn. Fortunately, the few shops recommended by the waiter were not far away. Xiao Hua also didn't have to spend too much effort to return to the inn. Once he entered the inn, Xiao Hua hurriedly looked for the waiter. Unfortunately, the one who met him wasn't Fan Riguan but another waiter. "Senior Immortal, do you need a place to stay?" The waiter warmly welcomed him. "Oh, I have already stayed." Where is Fan Riguan?" Xiao Hua looked up and asked. "Oh, Senior Immortal must be Taoist Master Xiao." The waiter's face was full of smiles as he said, "Brother Fan has an urgent matter at home today. It just so happens that a Senior Immortal is going to take a shuttle to the west side of the city tonight. He earnestly asked that Senior Immortal to bring him home. Oh right, before he left, Brother Fan also told me to properly serve Taoist Master Xiao. Does Taoist Master Xiao have any business?" "Oh no." Xiao Hua slapped his forehead. Was there even a need to say it? This Fan Riguan must have been impatient after receiving Xiao Hua's parasol pill. He couldn't wait until tomorrow to rush home. Then, when did Fan Riguan leave? Xiao Hua couldn't help but ask. "I'm afraid it was an hour ago. That was because the sky wasn't dark yet." Xiao Hua's heart chilled. From what he heard, that was the time when he had just left the inn. Ah, what a coincidence. Xiao Hua's mouth was somewhat bitter. "I hope it's as fellow Taoist Liang said. The medicinal effect of this parasol pill can be endured by the physique of a mortal. Admittedly, the parasol pill can only heal injuries and can't treat Fan Riguan's mother's illness. However, it can't take her life. Taoist Master Xiao, do you have business with Brother Fan?" The waiter was very quick-witted. He smiled apologetically and said, "The Senior Immortal who went to the west side of the city will return at noon tomorrow. Brother Fan should also be coming back with him. If it's not urgent, Taoist Master Xiao can wait until noon tomorrow." "If it's urgent, there's no harm in telling me." It's fine, Xiao Hua waved his hand. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly thought of something. He stopped and said, "That's right, just now I saw a lot of people wearing cloaks on the street. What's up with these cloaks?" Chapter 1302. Cloak. The waiter was stunned at first, then he understood and smiled. "That cloak is used by the immortals. How would I know what it is? I only know a little bit about its origin." Oh, please enlighten me. Xiaohua cupped his hands. I wouldn't dare. Taoist Master Xiao, you're too polite. The waiter had obviously never received such courtesy and was very flattered. He quickly bowed and said, "This cloak is used by the immortals to hide their identity. Taoist Master Xiao must know that in this Jinghua city, there are disciples under City Lord Lu to protect the safety of the city. All the immortals are not allowed to fight. As soon as they are discovered, they will immediately send out a law enforcement team to punish them. If their cultivation is high, City Lord Lu and Old Ancestor Mu may have to personally take action. TSK. In that case, no matter how high the immortals' cultivation is, they will still have to take their lives." So that's how it is. Xiaohua nodded slightly. No wonder Qing Fengmin and the others were so careful outside Jinghua City. As soon as they entered Jinghua City, they immediately dared to speak loudly and were not afraid of anything. With 2 mid-yuanying stage-old monsters keeping watch here, no one would dare to mess around. However, was that really the case? Xiaohua unconsciously thought of Lan Li Sect's third elder, Taoist Master Ming Zhuo. The waiter continued. Although no one is causing trouble in Jinghua City, but if the immortals are targeted by other immortals, they will still have the opportunity to catch up to them once they leave Jinghua City. Therefore, the best way is to not be targeted. Therefore, our country Shi's Qiqiao sect refined this cloak specially used by the immortals. Oh, Taoist Master Xiao, this cloak has a nice name. It's called Mystic Cloak. With this Mystic Cloak, no matter what you do, no one will be able to tell who you are. I heard that the immortals have different cultivation levels, but only the immortals with high cultivation levels can see through the cultivation of the immortals with low cultivation levels. As for their faces and such, it is still extremely difficult to see clearly. Qiqiao sect. Xiaohua frowned slightly. Is that one of the 3 major cultivation sects in the country of Xi? Taoist Xiao is indeed experienced and knowledgeable. It's that 7 skills sect. Even my Jinghua city doesn't dare to neglect them. The waiter gave a thumbs up as if Xiaohua was truly experienced and knowledgeable. Jinghua city 7 skills sect. Xiaohua abruptly came to a realization and said to himself, Isn't Jinghua city the same as a cultivation sect and a cultivation clan, an existence? What was the difference between a city, a grand formation, and the Yellow Flower Ridge and the Sect Protection Grand Formation? It was just that the form was a little different. This Jinghua city wasn't just a little bit stronger than Shanghuaming and 100 Herbs Gate. For such a huge city like Jinghua city to be so wary of the 3 major sects of the country of Xi, then just how powerful are the 3 major sects? Of course, with the emergence of this maze, many sects have also introduced their own maze. However, the purpose is the same, but the effect is very different. Hearing this, Xiaohua's ears perked up, but at this time, the waiter started to show off again. Taoist Master Xiao, you don't know. Previously, there was an immortal elder in Mayan who did not listen to this little one's advice, and bought a shabby one for a cheap price. Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This waiter was much more talkative than Fan Riguan. He talked for a long time, only talking about the different functions and advantages of the different Mai Ming, and also showing off his own recommendations. However, he didn't mention the price of the Mai Ming or where to buy it. After waiting for a long time, Xiaohua could not bear it anymore. He coughed twice and said, "Brother waiter, I am tired. Let's not listen to this for now. Let's talk again tomorrow when we have time." As he spoke, he walked inside. Ah! The waiter was stunned and chased after him. "This little one is not finished yet." That Xiaohua suddenly stopped and turned his head slightly. His face was expressionless as he said, "Is there anything else? Waiter." The waiter looked at Xiaohua's face and suddenly shuddered. He retreated 2 steps and waved his hand, saying, "No, this little one has nothing else to say. You please rest." "Humph," Xiaohua slightly snorted, then turned around and walked to the door of the room. He stuck the yellow talisman on the door, and the restriction on the room opened. Xiaohua stepped inside, and a faint light flashed, and the door disappeared again, leaving behind the waiter who was looking at him in a panic. After a long while, he finally left in embarrassment. Sigh, people are the most greedy. How can this little one not understand what this waiter is thinking? Xiao Hua shook his head slightly in the room and said to himself, "This Fan Riguan is also too much. If you want to leave, just leave. He even said to let this guy serve me well. Isn't this clearly telling him that I gave you the medicinal pill? How can this guy not covet it? Sometimes you can't be a good person." Xiao Hua was quite uncomfortable. After calming his heart, Xiao Hua took out the newly purchased foreshadowing brush, talisman ink, and talisman paper from his storage pouch. He also placed the talisman paper that Ma Qingqing gave him on the ground. Looking at the restriction that had been activated all around the room, Xiao Hua took out the fireball talisman booklet that Qing Fengmin gave him. After he carefully read the refining method of the fireball talisman in the booklet, he wrinkled his brows and put the booklet away. Sigh, no wonder. Senior Qing still wants to find a talisman maker to examine it. Refining the fireball talisman and refining the transmitting talisman are two completely different things. Refining the fireball talisman requires a talisman brush, talisman ink, and talisman paper. Refining the transmitting talisman only requires talisman paper. Even if I can easily refine the transmitting talisman, it can only mean that I have some talent in making yellow talismans. It simply doesn't mean that I can refine yellow talismans. Thinking, Xiao Hua took one of the talisman papers that Ma Qingqing gave him. Closing his eyes, he carefully recalled the talisman making techniques that he had learned during the day. When he had confidence, his fingers didn't break, and threads of magic power were sent out. After a few techniques, a paw sound was heard. Xiao Hua didn't conceal his cultivation, and sent out all of his magic power. A crimson-red transmitting talisman was successfully refined. This transmitting talisman seems to be different from the one last time. Xiao Hua held the transmitting talisman in his hand, a smile hanging on the corner of his mouth. His eyes carefully looked at it. He discovered that although the talismans on the transmitting talisman looked simple and crude, they seemed to be interlocked. The few talismans appeared to be vivid and lifelike. It was obviously not on the same level as the one he refined this morning. This young master actually has the talent to refine yellow talismans. Even if I become a loose cultivator, I'm afraid I won't starve to death. For the first time, Xiao Hua had confidence in his own prospects. However, presumably this is related to the profoundness of my magic power. The one I refined this morning only used 10% of my magic power. This time, I use 100% of my magic power. If this young master directly reached foundation establishment, then wouldn't the yellow talismans I refine be even more powerful? Xiao Hua thought to himself. Therefore, the advancement of my realm is still the most important. Soon after, Xiao Hua also refined several of those blank transmitting talismans. Although blank transmitting talismans were more difficult to refine than his own transmitting talismans, in Xiao Hua's opinion, it was only a matter of carefully controlling his magic power to not let his magic power exceed a certain limit. This way, the transmitting talisman wouldn't leave behind the mark of a talisman maker. Of course, it would become a blank yellow talisman. It was far easier than what Ma Qingqing said. This transmitting talisman, TSK, no matter how I look at it, it's 100 times better than those blank transmitting talismans that Fuzhan sent. Unfortunately, they actually don't accept yellow talismans. It's really annoying. Forget it, I'd better hurry up and refine the fireball talisman. This is the key to joining Heaven Forsaken. First, he spread out the rough talisman paper that Ma Qingqing gave him on the ground. Using his magic power, Xiao Hua melted the ink into a small tt. According to the formula on the small booklet, the melted ink floated in midair. Then he took out the talisman brush and closed his eyes for a moment. With a shake of his hand, he poured his magic power into the talisman brush. Soon after, the end of the talisman brush touched the ink. Without the slightest pause, like flowing water, he drew the talisman that he had memorized many times on the talisman paper. Unfortunately, this talisman drawn with a talisman brush was far less convenient than the talisman used to refine a transmission talisman. Xiao Hua had only just spent 2 strokes when the talisman quickly reached his wrist. His transcendence energy was somewhat stagnant, and he immediately knew that things were not good. Before he could think of a solution, The talisman paper burned with a bang. Xiao Hua's first time refining a yellow talisman could be considered to have ended in failure. Like I said, if yellow talismans were as easy to refine as I did this morning, the talisman crafting masters in the country of Xi would already be everywhere. Would there still be a need for each sect to specially nurture them? Even Heaven Forsaken wouldn't specially set a rule for talisman crafting masters that didn't need to contribute their cultivation method. After all, am not a genius. Xiao Hua inwardly pondered. He also remembered what Ma Qingqing said. Every talisman crafting master had to practice for a long time before they could become familiar with it and successfully refine each yellow talisman. Therefore, he wasn't the slightest bit discouraged. He closed his eyes and carefully pondered over the mistakes in his technique just now. Only then did he pick up the talisman brush again. He couldn't help but admire Xiao Hua's perseverance. Only someone like him who could stagnate at the first level of qi refining for 3 years, and use 12 years of transcendence energy to reach the second level of qi refining in half a year, a cultivator, had tried dozens of times on the simplest fireball talisman. Even after using up all the talisman papers Ma Qingqing gave him, he still couldn't successfully refine a single fireball talisman. Seeing the last talisman paper turn into ashes, Xiao Hua's complexion didn't change. He didn't frown and put down the talisman brush. His palms facing the sky, he carefully pondered. It seems, when the transcendence energy passes through the talisman brush, it can't perfectly coordinate with my hand gestures. It seems through the talisman brush, the amount of transcendence energy can't be controlled. It could also be talisman paper, or it could also be talisman ink. After thinking through all the possibilities, Xiao Hua somewhat helplessly looked at the low-grade talisman paper, talisman brush, and talisman ink in front of him. Could it be the reason for these talisman crafting materials? That only high-grade talisman brushes can better control the transcendence energy? That only high-grade talisman paper can withstand the mutation of transcendence energy? And that only high-grade talisman ink can better fuse the transcendence energy within? Xiao Hua's thoughts were indeed correct. These were the differences between high-grade, middle-grade and low-grade talismans, but did Xiao Hua have the spirit stones to buy those high-grade talisman papers? All of a sudden, Xiao Hua's eyes lit up. Chapter 1303. When Xiao Hua's gaze fell on the other talisman papers he bought from the refining talisman school, his eyes unconsciously lit up. These are talisman papers specially refined by the refining talisman school. Aren't they much stronger than the talisman papers refined by Senior Ma? If I use these talisman papers, I should be able to succeed. Xiao Hua didn't hurry to start refining. He first closed his eyes and adjusted his breathing. He circulated Shang Huaming's Qi Refinement Stage 2 cultivation method in his meridians a few times, replenishing the magic power he used to refine dozens of yellow talismans in one go. Only then did he open his eyes. The magic power required to refine yellow talismans is considerable. I've only tried dozens of times, but I didn't succeed even once. I actually used up 80% of the magic power in my body. Without magic power cultivation, I really can't succeed. Xiao Hua took a deep breath and took out the talisman brush again. He controlled a thread of magic power with extreme precision and slowly sent it into the talisman brush. Then, just like before, he touched the talisman ink and sent his magic power into it. With a shake of his wrist, he drew the talismans that he couldn't be more familiar with on the unfolded talisman paper. Stroke by stroke hiss, a light sound was heard. This time, he drew more talismans than the previous dozens of times. However, after reaching a certain point, the incomplete yellow talisman still emitted green smoke without mercy. Following the green smoke, the entire talisman paper turned into a ball of flame. It shone brightly for a moment, then turned into a pile of ashes. Xiao Hua was speechless. He put down the talisman brush in his hand. He stood up with his hands behind his back and quietly stared at the slightly flickering wall. It wasn't that he didn't want to continue trying, but the previous dozens of times already told him that as long as he failed in this place, even if he tried a few more times, it wouldn't be much better than this. Why is that? Didn't the talisman master of the refining talisman school also say that? I can use these talisman papers, talisman ink, and talisman brushes to practice refining fireball talismans. These talisman crafting materials are also specialized in making fire-type yellow talismans. If I can't succeed, there's no reason for them to give it to me. Moreover, this fireball talisman is a low-level yellow talisman. Even if it's a special talisman paper, compared to the talisman paper Senior Ma gave me, it's still. I can't buy high-grade talisman paper, talisman ink, and talisman brushes for this fireball talisman. Xiaohua thought to himself, if it's like this, even if I can craft fireball talismans, then how would Heaven Forsaken view it? Although they didn't mention anything about talisman crafting materials, using a high-grade material to craft a low-grade fireball talisman, I don't feel embarrassed. It's so difficult. Xiaohua let out a long sigh. He sat down cross-legged, put everything into his storage bag, and closed his eyes to cultivate. At this time, it was already night. The starlight followed the fluctuations of tracing light in Xiaohua's mind and projected onto his body, slowly seeping into his meridians and body. Furthermore, there was an extremely large amount of starlight surrounding Xiaohua's Naiwen Palace, slowly seeping into it with great difficulty. Suddenly, that cocoon-like starlight suddenly disappeared. Xiaohua opened his eyes, and his eyes were filled with pleasant surprise. He flew away while shouting, how could I be so foolish? Since I can easily craft a message talisman using a technique, and I can also easily imitate the sect master's technique for refining pills, why did I insist on using that talisman brush? That toy. Although it can replace fingers and pass magic power through the talisman brush, it's very easy to control. But for me, I seem to be born with a very good control over magic power. When I form a technique, why do I have to be like other people and pass magic power through the talisman brush? Ha ha ha. Xiaohua laughed heartily. He formed a technique and melted a piece of talisman ink once again. After pondering for a while, he tapped his finger on the talisman ink. Then he placed his hand on the talisman paper. His 10 fingers urged magic power, and he drew the talisman ink on the talisman paper according to the fireball talisman's inscription. In a short moment, a fireball talisman was drawn by Xiaohua. Yes, it was drawn, and definitely not refined. The fireball talisman was stuck on the talisman paper. The thickness was uneven. Although the lines were all extremely correct, but the talisman paper was still talisman paper, and the talisman ink was still talisman ink. What is this? Xiaohua looked at the thing he made by slapping his head, and he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. At this moment, a poof sound rang out. All of the talisman ink wrapped in magic power dissipated without a trace. Only a blank talisman paper was left, completely undamaged. Was I wrong? Xiaohua frowned. He seemed to have thought of something, but when he thought about it carefully, he couldn't grasp the clue. In the end, where did I go wrong? Xiaohua stood up and paced back and forth in the room. After an unknown amount of time, Xiaohua suddenly stopped and said to himself, I drew the fireball talisman, but when I used my finger to draw on the talisman paper, the thickness is uneven. I can't form a real talisman. The reason for the uneven thickness is that the time my finger touches the talisman paper is different. Although my magic power can be finely controlled, touching the talisman paper requires many times of practice to become proficient. That's right. Thinking up to here, Xiaohua clapped his hands and said with a smile, I was wrong again. Since I can't draw the talisman on the talisman paper at the same time, why can't I draw the talisman on the outside of the talisman paper, and then directly inscribe it on the talisman paper? But, in the small book that Senior Qing gave me, there was no such spell. Suddenly, Xiaohua's hand involuntarily waved. A series of spells that seemed unfamiliar to Xiaohua, but he felt extremely familiar with, came out of his hand. Moreover, compared to the fireball talisman's spell, this spell was even more profound and obscure. It was to the point that it was a completely different type of spell. This is the spell to inscribe the talisman onto the talisman paper? Xiaohua had some understanding in his heart. Suppressing the unparalleled excitement in his heart, Xiaohua took a deep breath, dipped his finger in talisman ink, and drew the fireball talisman. After the practice just now, and trying out even more profound talismans, this fireball talisman appeared extremely simple. In just a moment, Xiaohua used talisman ink to draw a complete fireball talisman out of thin air. Soon after, Xiaohua's fingers moved in succession. It was the spell that he had just thought of. After the spell was completed, Xiaohua pushed his hand and reprimanded, "Quick!" Ka! A crisp sound rang out. The fireball talisman in the air landed on the talisman paper, making a sound. A yellow fireball talisman was born. This really succeeded. Ha ha ha, this is truly inconceivable. Xiaohua saw that the fireball talisman was actually successfully refined. He didn't dare to believe his eyes. When he picked up the fireball talisman, he was even more stunned. His eyes were practically about to pop out of their sockets. High-grade fireball talisman? This. Xiaohua couldn't help but rub his eyes, carefully looking at the fireball talisman in his hand. There's no mistake, it's really a fireball talisman. Compared to the high-grade fireball talisman Senior Bai showed me, the talismans are even more detailed. The fire-type spiritual energy contained inside the talisman is even more powerful. If this fireball talisman isn't a high-grade one, the yellow talisman shop of the Fuzhan sect will be smashed by others. Countless thoughts flashed through Xiaohua's mind. Even if I can refine a fireball talisman, but I can't directly refine a high-grade fireball talisman. At best, a low-grade fireball talisman would be pretty good. Don't tell me that I relied on my own hand technique just now. Right, since I can discard this talisman brush then. This talisman ink. And talisman paper. Can I also discard it? Although I don't know if it's possible, I feel that it's indeed possible. Xiaohua frowned again. He sat down on the ground, not paying attention to the fireball talisman floating in the air. He closed his eyes and started to ponder. But if I don't use the talisman ink, what can I use to imprison the magical power on the talisman paper? If I don't have the talisman paper, what can I use to carry the magical power and produce the talisman? There must be. It's just that I don't know. Or rather, I can't remember. With his eyes closed, Xiaohua looked at the reverse light in the space behind his head. I don't know when I'll be able to retrieve my memories from this reverse light. At that time, I'll probably know about my life and this talisman crafting technique. After a long while, Xiaohua's joy of successfully refining the fireball talisman was diluted by his emotions of not being able to find his memories. Xiaohua simply turned his 5 hearts to the sky and silently operated Shang Huaming's cultivation technique. He adjusted his emotions to the state of being unintentional. Only then did his face sink. His eyes were calm. He waved his hands, dipped them in talisman ink, and drew 2 identical fireball talismans in the air. Then his hands formed hand seals and waved at the same time. Ka-ka. 2 crisp sounds rang out. 2 high-grade fireball talismans were produced at the same time. Only when the 2 high-grade yellow talismans were produced at the same time did Xiaohua retract his hands. He placed his hands in front of his eyes and turned them back and forth several times. Then his 10 fingers moved slightly, appearing extremely nimble. This kind of dexterous hand seal was absolutely innate. It was also what Xiaohua possessed before he lost his memories. It had nothing to do with Shang Huaming and Yellowflower Ridge. In any case, I refined it myself. Why should I care about what's going on? At this moment, Xiaohua was extremely calm. He believed that as time passed, there would definitely be even more astonishing things happening to him. Everything that happened now was merely a prelude. Although Xiaohua was in the early stage of the second layer of the qi refining realm, the magic power in his body was extremely vigorous. It was absolutely not something that cultivators of the same level could compare to. Just now he had refined 3 high-grade fireball talismans. He practically didn't consume much magic power, far less than using talisman brushes. Next, Xiaohua also wanted to refine the talisman ink and talisman paper he bought from the refining talisman school's shop into fireball talismans in one go. However, he spent a mid-grade spirit stone in the shop and a low-grade talisman brush cost 50 low-grade spirit stones. That middle-aged cultivator also gave Xiaohua 30 pieces of low-grade talisman ink and 2,000 blank low-grade talisman papers. According to that middle-aged cultivator's estimation, these 2,000 low-grade talisman papers would be enough for Xiaohua to practice his craft. Unfortunately, he never imagined that Xiaohua's talisman crafting technique would be so inconceivable. Apart from wasting all the blank talisman papers Ma Qingqing gave him, there were also several pieces of talisman paper he bought in the beginning that were wasted. Afterwards, there were practically no wasted talisman papers. Therefore, after Xiaohua used up all 30 pieces of talisman ink and refined more than 300 high-grade fireball talismans, there were still more than 1,000 blank low-grade talisman papers left. Chapter 1304. What made Xiaohua the happiest wasn't that he refined over 300 high-grade fireball talismans, but rather, the growth of his magic power. Speaking of which, the magic power within Xiaohua's body was far stronger than those of the same stage, but his realm was only at the second level of qi refinement, so of course it wasn't enough to support the refinement of over 300 fireball talismans. After Xiaohua refined several dozen fireball talismans, the magic power within his body was completely exhausted, and he couldn't continue. He could only stop and use Shang Huaming's qi refinement technique to regulate his breathing and restore his magic power. At the beginning he didn't think much of it, but in the end, after he used up all the talisman ink, he checked the magic power within his body. This mere night of refining talismans actually increased his magic power by more than 3 days of pure cultivation. Ha ha ha, Xiaohua unconsciously raised his head and laughed heartily. The heavenly law is the most fair. Although the growth of my magic power is slow and the growth of my realm is even more difficult, even refining a fireball talisman that can earn spirit stones can increase my magic power. What can I complain about? For a moment, Xiaohua's mood was free from worry. He felt that there were no more difficult things in this world. Even if there was a mountain of danger, there would certainly be a path to the mountain. I refined yellow talismans for an entire night. I'm afraid it's already morning. I don't know if Fan Riguan has returned or not. His mother is fine. Xiaohua suddenly thought of Fan Riguan, and felt very uneasy for rashly giving him a parasol pill. Removing the restriction in the room, Xiaohua walked out of the room and into the hall. He met the waiter who came to greet him. It was the same waiter from yesterday. Greetings, Senior Immortal. Are you going out? It's already afternoon. If you still want to stay here tonight, I'm afraid you'll have to pay the spirit stones for the night first. The waiter's tone was the same, but it was less enthusiastic. Afternoon. Xiaohua was slightly stunned and looked at the sky. Of course, the sun hanging high in the sky was already leaning south. Has Fan Riguan returned? Xiaohua immediately asked. Senior Immortal, please know that Brother Fan hasn't returned yet. Didn't you say yesterday that he would return at noon today? Xiaohua thought to himself. I don't know. The waiter replied respectfully. Oh, I see. Xiaohua wanted to ask where Fan Riguan's home was, but after thinking about it, if Fan Riguan's mother had taken the parasol pill and lost her life, then it would have happened last night. Even if he found his home now, what use would it be? Xiaohua was filled with regret. He patted his storage pouch and handed the remaining 9 low-grade spirit stones to the waiter. He said, after I leave, I'll hand over these low-grade spirit stones to the counter when I come back. However, when the waiter saw this, his face revealed a troubled expression. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, Immortal Elder, please don't make things difficult for me. If you want to give me 10 spirit stones, just give me 10 spirit stones. 9 spirit stones. The counter doesn't allow you to take them. Furthermore, it's still early in the evening. Before the sky turns dark, the array in the room won't change. Senior Immortal, you only need to return before your immortal talisman loses its effect and hand over the 10 spirit stones. Actually, if there's nothing in your house, it doesn't matter even if the array in your house fails. You just need to come back at night and ask the shopkeeper to give you a new talisman. Oh, Xiaohua understood. He nodded and said, I understand. As he said this, he put the spirit stones into his storage pouch and walked out without looking back. Yesterday he didn't have any spirit stones in his pouch, so he had no choice but to look around. Today he already had 20 mid-grade spirit stones in his pouch. Wouldn't he be able to stay wherever he went? Why should he be restricted to this place? Moreover, he had already noticed the slight change in the waiter's attitude. He felt shameless in his heart, so he didn't feel like saying half a word more. After leaving the inn, Xiaohua pondered for a while. He wasn't sure which yellow talisman shop he should go to. After thinking for a while, he came up with an excuse in his mind. Only then did he walk straight to the Refining Talisman School's middle-aged cultivator's yellow talisman shop. Normally, it should be afternoon right now, so there should be customers. However, when Xiaohua entered, the shop was empty. There was only a second layer or a refining boy holding a thin booklet in his hand, reading it with rapt attention. When the boy heard the sound of footsteps, he immediately raised his head and put away the booklet. He said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist." When he saw Xiaohua's face and knew he came yesterday, he became even more enthusiastic. "So it's fellow Taoist. You just came to my small shop yesterday. What do you need today?" Xiaohua looked left and right and asked curiously, "Yesterday, I saw a lot of customers in your shop. Now why is there no one here?" The boy stared at Xiaohua, not knowing what he meant. A moment later, he rolled his eyes and said with a smile, "Maybe it's because the weather is hot and people are sleepy. They're all taking an afternoon nap." Afternoon nap? Xiaohua pinched his nose. He knew this boy was being perfunctory, so he nodded and said, "Fellow Taoist is right." The boy was a bit impatient. He cupped his hands and said, "Fellow Taoist, I bought a lot of talisman-making materials yesterday. I'm afraid they won't be used for a long time. Did you come today to buy yellow talismans?" Upon seeing this, Xiaohua said with a smile, "In my school, there are masters with profound cultivation who can refine yellow talismans. I don't need to always come to buy them." "Then why did fellow Taoist come?" Xiaohua rolled his eyes and said, "I don't know if your shop has a talisman refining technique. I want to buy it and study it." Talisman refining technique? The boy was stunned. Soon after, disdain appeared on his face as he replied, "Fellow Taoist, since your school has masters with profound cultivation who can refine yellow talismans, you naturally have a talisman refining technique. Why are you coveting my talisman refining schools? Could it be that fellow Taoist is making fun of I?" The boy was much younger than Xiaohua, and his cultivation was deeper than Xiaohua's. He had long looked down on Xiaohua in his heart. Now that he heard Xiaohua's thoughts, he became even angrier and his tone became a bit more angry. "Heh, I just want to compare them for reference." Xiaohua didn't get angry and said with a smile, "Does your shop have them or not?" "How is that possible?" The boy was somewhat flustered and exasperated. "The talisman refining technique is my talisman refining school's most precious inheritance. How could it be placed in the shop for sale? Did you get stimulated at the E-Bazaar in the south of the city, and came to my shop to make fun of me? E-Bazaar?" Xiaohua was stunned and said inwardly, "What is this place?" Before Xiaohua could open his mouth, he heard someone berate behind the boy. "Qing Miao, is this how you speak to a customer?" When Xiaohua raised his head to look, it was precisely that middle-aged cultivator. His expression was also somewhat displeased as he walked out from inside. "Senior Marshal Brother," the boy turned his face and said with extreme grievance, "This guy, I'm afraid he came to cause trouble." Fellow Taoist, that middle-aged cultivator should have also heard the conversation between the two. He walked closer and cupped his hands. "Within my talisman refining school shop, we only sell yellow talismans and talisman refining materials. We don't sell talisman refining techniques. Within all the shops within Jingpa City, there's also no talisman refining techniques for sale. If fellow Taoist wants to look, you should go to the E-Bazaar in the south of the city and try your luck. Perhaps you can even exchange for talisman refining techniques." "Talisman?" Xiaohua's heart stirred. Then he said with a smile on his face, "Senior, please calm down. I was only joking with fellow Taoist. Don't take it seriously." That middle-aged cultivator's gaze flickered. His expression didn't change, and his tone was still indifferent as he asked, "Then, fellow Taoist, why have you come to my humble shop again?" Xiaohua smiled and said, "It's nothing much. I have 2 matters to discuss with Senior." "What 2 matters?" The middle-aged cultivator was somewhat baffled. Xiaohua patted his storage pouch and took out the talisman brush from within. He handed it over and said with a smile, "This talisman brush, Junior used it last night, but forget it. Junior isn't afraid of making a fool of himself in front of Senior. Yesterday, I bought some talisman papers and other materials to refine fireball talismans from your esteemed shop. Last night, I was idle and had nothing to do, so I asked the elders of my school to give me pointers on the refining method. But I refined it for a long time and still couldn't refine one." Xiaohua hadn't finished speaking when the boy at the side burst out laughing. He covered his mouth and was practically about to bend over. "Qing Miao." The middle-aged cultivator wasn't surprised at all. He only coldly berated, "What face do you have to laugh at me? You don't even have the guts to refine it." Soon after, he cupped his hands towards the embarrassed Xiaohua and said, "Fellow Taoist, please don't blame me. Actually, fellow Taoist, there's nothing to be embarrassed about. Even though the fireball talisman is a low-level yellow talisman, it's still a true offensive yellow talisman. It can't be compared to a supplementary yellow talisman like a messaging talisman. Fellow Taoist cultivation is still shallow. Being able to have the guts to refine it and not be afraid of failure is already commendable." Cough cough. My school's elders also said this, so Xiaohua awkwardly looked at the talisman brush in his hand and said, "This talisman brush, Junior hasn't used it much. Do you think? Can I return it to Senior?" That middle-aged cultivator didn't expect that Xiaohua actually came to return the talisman brush. He unconsciously hesitated. "Actually, even though this talisman brush is a low-level one, it's still refined by my talisman refining school. There's no harm in fellow Taoists keeping it first. It won't be too late to use it after a few years when your cultivation has increased." "Senior," Xiaohua pleaded, "this talisman brush, I'm afraid Junior won't be able to use it for over 10 years. There's no need to talk about talisman paper and talisman ink. They aren't worth much spirit stones. My other senior martial brothers can also use them, but this talisman brush, senior martial brothers all have it. Wait until Junior's cultivation has deepened in the future, then I'll come back to your store to buy a high-grade talisman brush. What do you think?" "You're so unreasonable." The boy at the side jumped up. "If your cultivation isn't enough, then don't try to show off. Since you bought it and can't use it, you still want to return it. How can disciples of large sects like you all be so overbearing?" Qing Miao, the middle-aged cultivator, couldn't help but berate, "Shut up." Then he smiled apologetically at Xiaohua. "Fellow Taoist, if this talisman brush is useless, then you can return it. But since you've already used it, forgive my store for being unable to do anything." "Oh, since it's like this." Xiaohua shook his head and said, "Since it's like this then, Junior also has nothing to say. Sigh, I originally wanted to talk about a good matter with your store. Let's stop here." That middle-aged man's eyes slightly moved, and he asked, "I wonder if fellow Taoist, the second matter you mentioned just now is?" Xiaohua slightly spun the talisman brush in his hand, and said with a smile, "The first matter still hasn't come to an end, so of course there isn't a second matter." Looking at Xiaohua's almost rascal appearance, the middle-aged cultivator wore a smile at the corners of his mouth. He took the talisman brush, carefully looked at it, and nodded, saying, "Fellow Taoist is right. This talisman brush has only been used 20 or so times. It can also be considered new. This new bite is very heavy." Xiaohua's face was embarrassed, yet he revealed a trace of a smile. "Since fellow Taoist wants to return it like this, then I will also help fellow Taoist," the middle-aged cultivator said somewhat helplessly. "However, a new talisman brush costs 50 low-grade spirit stones. If my humble store wants to return it, I can only return 30 to fellow Taoist." "Ha! Why so little?" Xiaohua's face revealed displeasure, and he pointed at the talisman brush and said, "Didn't Senior also say it? This talisman brush has only been used 20 times, and it's still very new. Fellow Taoist, not to mention that this talisman brush has only been used 20 times. Even if it's only been used once, fellow Taoist's magic power has already contaminated this talisman brush. Say, if it's fellow Taoist, would you still buy this talisman brush? The middle-aged cultivator said with a chuckle. This Xiaohua's face was somewhat hesitant, and he thought for a moment then said, "How about this, senior, spare me another 10 high-grade talisman papers." You. Fellow Taoist, don't push your luck. If fellow Taoist doesn't agree, then please take back this talisman brush. The middle-aged cultivator's face slightly changed. Cough cough, forget it, forget it. Since senior has spoken like this, then I'll do as senior says. When Xiaohua saw this, he hurriedly waved his hand, and he immediately placed his hand behind his back, looking like he wouldn't accept the talisman brush even if the middle-aged cultivator gave it to him. Humph, the middle-aged cultivator snorted from his nose, and he threw the talisman brush towards the boy, then said, "Qingmiao, this talisman brush can be considered a gift from senior brother to you. When you refine talismans in the future, you must remember senior brother's kindness." Yes, senior brother. The boy happily received it, but the middle-aged cultivator's next sentence caused him to immediately cry. These 30 low-grade spirit stones will be deducted from your salary. Soon after, the middle-aged cultivator cupped his hands and said, "I wonder what fellow Taoist's second good thing is." Hee, Xiaohua said with a smile. Senior said yesterday that if Junior has high-grade yellow talismans, your shop can purchase them for 1 medium-grade spirit stone. The middle-aged cultivator's brows slightly wrinkled, and he corrected, "It's 40 to 80 low-grade spirit stones, not 1 medium-grade spirit stone." Soon after, he said disapprovingly, "Could it be that fellow Taoist has high-grade yellow talismans?" "That's right," Xiaohua said proudly. "Yesterday, the elders of my sect guided Junior's cultivation, and I refined some high-grade fireball talismans. I wonder if Senior is interested in purchasing them?" This hearing Xiaohua's words, the middle-aged cultivator who originally thought that there was something good immediately deflated. Of course, a high-grade fireball talisman is worth 50 to 100 low-grade spirit stones in his shop, and if he buys them from Xiaohua, it's only 40 to 80 low-grade spirit stones. He can only earn a difference of 10 to 20 low-grade spirit stones at most. Can this be considered a good thing? The middle-aged cultivator originally wanted to refuse, but thinking about how he just received the talisman brush returned by Xiaohua, and how Xiaohua said yesterday that the shop can purchase them, he could only weakly say, "Fellow Taoist, please take out the fireball talismans refined by your sect's elders for me to take a look. I have already said if they aren't high-grade fireball talismans. Oh, if the number is too small, I am also not interested." Chapter 1305. Hearing the middle-aged cultivator agree, Xiaohua was overjoyed in his heart. He didn't care about the embarrassment and displeasure on the middle-aged cultivator's face. He slapped his hand and took out a fireball talisman he refined from his storage pouch. He handed it over and said with a smile, "Senior, please appraise this. Is this a high-grade fireball talisman?" "You bastard! You still want my senior brother to appraise it? So you don't know this is a high-grade fireball talisman?" The boy at the side had already jumped up and said in exasperation. Presumably he was still regretting his 30 low-grade spirit stones salary. "I'll let fellow Taoist know. Fellow Taoist's cultivation is higher than I's, and you're also cultivating in the refining talisman school. I wonder, when did you see a high-grade yellow talisman?" Xiaohua asked back without hesitation. "You," the boy called Qing Miao was speechless. Xiaohua's words had hit his weak spot. Although he was a disciple of the refining talisman school, his cultivation was only at the second level of the Qi refinement school. In the school, he belonged to the type with low cultivation. Because he didn't have any future in the area of cultivation and talisman crafting, he was sent to Jinghua City to be a shop assistant. Although he usually had a salary of spirit stones, his cultivation was still far inferior to his other senior brothers. Therefore, not to mention that he saw a high-grade yellow talisman very late. Even a middle-grade yellow talisman was only seen in this shop in Jinghua City. The middle-aged cultivator took the fireball talisman from Xiaohua and casually glanced at it. His ears heard the two people bickering, and he couldn't help but be enraged. Just as he was about to berate them, his face suddenly changed. His hands slightly trembled and he hurriedly said, "Fellow Taoist, what's wrong? Senior, could it be that this isn't a high-grade fireball talisman?" Xiaohua was somewhat disappointed. He only roughly glanced at the appearance of a high-grade yellow talisman in the talisman school's shop. He wasn't completely sure in his heart. "No, it's not." The middle-aged cultivator steadied his mind and cupped his hands while holding the fireball talisman. "I am the Refining Talisman School's Tian Haoguang. Fellow Taoist, what's your name?" Seeing Tian Haoguang introduce himself, Xiaohua's heart blossomed with joy. He smiled and cupped his hands. "Senior Tian is Junior Xiao." "Oh, fellow Taoist Xiao." Tian Haoguang was very polite at this time and said, "I didn't expect. Alas, I was really rude." Based on what Senior Tian said, "I didn't reveal any of my identity. Has Senior been rude?" Xiaohua's eyes turned as he said with a light smile, "Oh, if fellow Taoist is not worried, can you come inside and have a talk with I? What does Senior Tian have to say that you can't say here?" Xiaohua immediately said vigilantly, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, don't think too much." Tian Haoguang said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist, this fireball talisman is a little strange. I have no choice but to test the power of this fireball talisman in the secret chamber. Therefore, I would like to ask fellow Taoist to enlighten me at the side." "So it's like that." Xiaohua was still somewhat hesitant. "Senior brothers are still waiting for I in the inn. Fellow Taoist Xiao, don't be anxious. It will only take a moment. It won't take up much of your senior brother's time." "Then, all right." Xiaohua nodded. "Qing Miao, you make the decisions in the shop. Before I come out, don't disturb me," Tian Haoguang instructed, then said to Xiaohua, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, please come with me." "Senior, please go first." Tian Haoguang was also not polite. He took the lead and led Xiaohua to the back. The back of the store was also extremely small. In addition, the front of the store was also slightly smaller than the store of the Fujian faction. As Tian Haoguang walked into a small room that was faintly illuminated, Xiaohua subconsciously looked around. This room was only 1 square foot in size. Unlike the store in front of him, the walls of this room, from top to bottom, were covered with complicated runes, giving it a very mysterious appearance. However, Xiaohua's current identity was a disciple of a big cultivation sect. Therefore, he tried not to reveal anything and only calmly looked at Tian Haoguang. After Tian Haoguang entered the room, he patted his storage pouch and took out a yellow talisman. He sent a trace of magic power into it. The yellow talisman emitted an extremely resplendent green brilliance. Soon after, Tian Haoguang stuck the yellow talisman on the wall. The green brilliance immediately spread around the yellow talisman. In the blink of an eye, the entire room was enveloped by the green brilliance. "Fellow Taoist Xiao, this is the place where my sect tests the yellow talisman. It's really simple and crude. Please excuse us," Tian Haoguang said. It's just a so. "Senior Tian, please begin," Xiaohua said with a smile. Suddenly he said again, "That's right, Senior, the fireball talisman used for testing. Who is it?" "Oh." Tian Haoguang stared blankly, then immediately laughed and said, "That's easy. If it's really a high-grade fireball talisman, then it's naturally my sect that will pay the spirit stones. If it's not a high-grade fireball talisman, fellow Taoist Xiao, what do you say?" I know. Naturally, there's no need for Senior Tian to pay the spirit stones," Xiaohua replied. "Actually, fellow Taoist Xiao, I wonder what the cultivation level of the senior who refined this fireball talisman is?" Tian Haoguang hesitated for a moment and asked, "Forgive me for not being able to tell you." Xiaohua slightly shook his head. Then, I better not ask. I presume fellow Taoist Xiao will still say the same thing." Tian Haoguang smiled bitterly. "Yes, indeed. I will still say the same. Forgive me for not being able to tell you," Xiaohua said without the slightest hesitation with a spring breeze on his face. Tian Haoguang once again carefully looked at the fireball talisman in his hand. He glanced at Xiaohua and said in a low voice, "Actually, I have a doubt in my heart. I didn't dare to rashly ask you in the shop just now." "Please speak," Xiaohua replied. "I don't know what the cultivation level of your honorable sex senior is. I also don't know what kind of magic art this senior used. I'm really very curious in my heart." "What? Is there a problem with this fireball talisman?" Xiaohua asked curiously. "There isn't a problem. This is indeed a genuine fireball talisman." "That's right. I really don't understand. How can this low-grade talisman paper be refined into a high-grade fireball talisman? Logically speaking, the quality of a low-grade talisman paper shouldn't be able to bear the magic power and spiritual energy contained within a high-grade fireball talisman." Tian Haoguang's eyes were filled with puzzlement. "The only explanation I can think of is that your honorable sex senior used your honorable sex special talisman refining technique. Of course, this isn't what I can't understand the most. What I can't figure out the most is that the runes on this fireball talisman, every stroke and stroke is abnormally uniform. It's as if there's no order at all. And they're all drawn at the same time with the talisman brush. Not to mention even if it's I's martial uncle, my refining talisman sect master. It's impossible for the runes he drew to be so consistent from start to finish." "Nonsense, that's what I directly inserted into the talisman paper at the same time. Of course it's very uniform." Xiaohua snickered in his heart. "Sure enough," Tian Haoguang said again. "According to what I've seen and heard, this kind of technique seems to be drawing the talisman out of thin air and then inserting it at the same time." "Huh." Xiaohua was slightly startled and secretly said, "This Tian Haoguang really has some knowledge. He's almost right." "But," Tian Haoguang frowned again, "but this kind of technique to insert the talisman out of thin air is the refining technique of jade talismans. In Xiuyu continent, it's already lost. I've never heard of any sect in our country of Xi that still has this kind of consummate skill." "Jade talisman?" Xiaohua's eyes lit up and said with a smile, "Could it be? Senior thinks that my sex master knows the refining technique of jade talismans?" Even though he wanted to know what a jade talisman was, but he didn't dare to ask blindly. "That's not it. This technique seems to be the refining technique of jade talismans, but I can also say with certainty that this is absolutely not the refining technique of jade talismans," Tian Haoguang said resolutely and decisively. "Huh. Why is Senior so sure?" Xiaohua didn't understand. Because the talisman used in this fireball talisman is my country of Xi's most common and simplest kind. This kind of talisman needs to contain the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in order to emit fire energy. And jade talismans can't possibly contain spiritual energy." Tian Haoguang's brows wrinkled into a knot and said, "This is also what I don't understand the most. Since the sex senior has such a profound refining technique, why would he use the most simple and crude talisman to create such a high-grade fireball talisman?" I thought you were going to say something?" Xiaohua let out a long breath and said with hidden bitterness, "Senior Tian, don't forget my sex master is instructing this junior to refine talismans. If he used a profound talisman, would this junior be able to understand it?" Look at me. I've walked into a dead end and actually forgot this part." Tian Haoguang slapped his forehead and laughed. "I am really muddle-headed. However, fellow Taoist's master really has good technique. Using low-grade talisman paper and talisman ink, he was able to refine a high-grade fireball talisman. I presume that the talisman brush used by Senior was also specially made by Senior, right?" No comment. Xiaohua still said the same sentence. "All right, fellow Taoist Xiao, please be careful. I will begin testing the talismans." As Tian Haoguang spoke, he slapped his storage pouch again and took out another yellow talisman. With a flick of his hand, the yellow talisman turned into a flame and disappeared. An azure brilliance fell from the top of Xiaohua's and Xiaohua's heads, shielding the two of them behind it. Then, Tian Haoguang injected magic power into the fireball talisman. With a point of his finger, the yellow talisman slowly burned and lightly flew forward. "Ha!" Tian Haoguang's mouth softly let out an astonished sound. His fingers slightly moved, and the small fireball burning in the yellow talisman was like a speck of brilliance. Following Tian Haoguang's finger, it swayed up and down, slowly flying towards the opposite wall. Boom! When the small fireball hit the wall, it made an extremely loud noise. The entire room was filled with a brilliant brilliance. Soon after, a gust of wind blew, followed by a blazing heat wave. The cyan light barrier in front of Xiaohua and Tian Haoguang shook violently, as if it was going to collapse at any moment. In the blink of an eye, the brilliance gradually dimmed, and the fierce wind and heat wave also gradually weakened. The azure light barrier finally couldn't hold on, and after a few swings, it disappeared without a trace. Xiaohua's mouth was wide open. He didn't expect that the fireball talisman he practiced would actually have such power. But Xiaohua wasn't the only one who was surprised. The one who was even more surprised was Tian Haoguang. Tian Haoguang could only be seen blankly staring at the opposite wall. On the wall, the azure brilliance had already burned an enormous hole. Chapter 1306. On the wall, the fireball talisman burned an enormous hole in the azure brilliance. The surroundings of the hole were still faintly flickering with these wisps of flames, not immediately extinguishing. Tian Haoguang used his index finger to point in astonishment and muttered, Is this still a high-grade yellow talisman?" As he spoke, Tian Haoguang suddenly came to his senses. He quickly ran to the front of the blasted wall, and carefully examined it from left to right. Xiaohua also followed him forward. The closer he got to the wall, the hotter it became. It was as if the air around the wall had been ignited. Tian Haoguang's face was incomparably astonished. He extended his hand and stroked the restriction that couldn't immediately return to its original state. After a long while, he sighed and turned his head around. He asked with great reverence, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, what kind of fire attribute cultivation method does your sex master cultivate?" Xiaohua shrugged his shoulders and still said the same sentence. "No comment." "Sai, this fireball talisman is clearly a high-grade yellow talisman. Yet I still insisted on testing its might. I presume that fellow Taoist Xiao certainly has some criticism towards I, right?" Tian Haoguang said with a smile. Xiaohua secretly said in his heart, "I've never thought of it that way." However, the corners of his mouth held a smile and he kept his mouth shut, declining to comment. "I'll tell you the truth." Tian Haoguang seemed to intend to lay his cards on the table. He pointed at the hole in the wall that still hadn't recovered and said, "Although the fireball talisman that fellow Taoist Xiao brought over is a high-grade yellow talisman no matter how you look at it, I personally saw you buy low-grade talisman ink and talisman paper in my humble shop yesterday. Therefore, I am very skeptical. Using a high-grade talisman brush, no. Even if you used a legendary top-grade talisman brush, how could you possibly draw a high-grade yellow talisman? After all, the magic power and spiritual energy that this low-grade talisman paper and talisman ink can carry is limited. At most, it can only refine a middle-grade yellow talisman." Xiaohua slightly nodded, indicating for him to continue speaking. "That's why I had no choice but to come here and take the test. Fellow Taoist Xiao, please observe. But as I expected, the fireball talisman made by your sex master contained very little spiritual energy. It barely reached the limit of what the talisman paper and talisman ink could bear. But what was beyond I's expectation was that the magic power used to draw the talisman, although it was very little, it was the same as the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. But the magic power was of the fire attribute. Moreover, it was very mysterious. Only a little magic power was used to draw the talisman, and it could absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth from the surroundings. If your sex master hadn't practiced the supreme fire attribute cultivation method, he wouldn't have been able to achieve such power. Hearing this, Xiaohua couldn't help but feel strange. Shang Huoming's cultivation method is water-based. This is what sect leader said himself. It's definitely true. Could it be that it's a problem with my attributes? Xiaohua very naturally thought of the matter of him holding the pearl in his hand to test his attributes in the Yellow Flower Ridge's inheritance palace. To be able to use Qi condensation magic power to refine high-grade fireball talismans, no, looking at the power, it's even more powerful than ordinary high-grade fireball talismans. Your sex master. TSK, he's really brilliant. Tian Haoguang exclaimed in admiration. Xiao Hua's eyes turned, and he slapped his forehead, looking as if he suddenly realized something. I was wondering why the 3 grandmasters only used Qi condensation magic power. No wonder. It didn't take any effort to refine so many at once. 3 grandmasters. Tian Haoguang glanced at Xiao Hua very strangely. He didn't know what he was thinking. Xiao Hua immediately looked remorseful. He hurriedly changed the topic and said with a beaming smile, Senior Tian, this high-grade yellow talisman has already been tested. It's genuine, right? Indeed. Then, what does Senior Tian plan to offer? How many spirit stones? Xiao Hua's eyes started to shine. Yes, according to the usual market price, a high-grade fireball talisman is only 80 low-grade spirit stones. However, since fellow Taoist Xiao came here for the first time, and this fireball talisman is a bit better than ordinary high-grade yellow talismans, so I feel that 1 mid-grade spirit stone. Is fellow Taoist Xiao appropriate? Xiao Hua's heart was already blooming with joy. How much did he spend? He originally thought that 30 or 40 low-grade spirit stones would be enough. He didn't expect that Tian Haoguang would actually offer 1 mid-grade spirit stone. This Tian Haoguang's reputation is really not ordinary. Xiao Hua secretly nodded. Seeing that Xiao Hua didn't speak, Tian Haoguang hurriedly said, Fellow Taoist Xiao I's price is already very accommodating. I was still thinking that fellow Taoists could come to my humble shop more in the future. Ha, Senior Tian. It's not that I'm unwilling, it's just that I'm too happy. However, Senior has to keep it a secret. If the sex master finds out, my skin will be peeled off. Tian Haoguang's face was also full of smiles, with an I understand expression. It seems that he quite appreciates Xiao Hua's straightforward manner. Since Senior Tian approves, Junior has 99 fireball talismans refined by my sex master. Senior Tian, please take a look. Let's see if they are the same high-grade fireball talismans. Xiao Hua also laughed happily. He patted his storage bag and took out a large pile of identical fireball talismans. Look at what fellow Taoist Xiao is saying. Since it's what? 100? Tian Haoguang didn't pay attention to the number Xiao Hua mentioned at first. After all, these fireball talismans were only refined last night when he was guiding Xiao Hua in refining talismans. How could there be more? Although Tian Haoguang had a limit on the number just now, seeing these fireball talismans that were even more powerful than ordinary high-grade yellow talismans, how could he not want them? Not to mention the 3 grandmasters proficient in fire attribute cultivation methods that Xiao Hua mentioned. When he realized that there were no less than 100 high-grade fireball talismans, he couldn't help but open his mouth in shock. Xiao Hua saw that he had said too much and immediately laughed. My sex master was itching to test his skills. That a few of us exchanged pointers and unknowingly refined so many. My sex master wasn't very interested in these yellow talismans, so it was convenient for us, fellow apprentices. Oh, so that's how it is. In Tian Haoguang's mind, the appearance of the 3 young sex master fuming and glaring at each other emerged. They were unwilling to accept each other's loss, and were immersed in painstakingly refining high-grade fireball talismans. He nodded his head in understanding. Fellow Taoist Xiao, you have good luck. Sigh Senior Tian. I've made a fool of myself. How could it be my luck alone? Xiao Hua squinted his eyes and laughed. Tian Haoguang took those high-grade fireball talismans and very carefully inspected them one by one. When he finished inspecting the 99 talismans, Xiao Hua's face had long since revealed impatience. Fellow Taoist Xiao, you've been waiting impatiently. Tian Haoguang put all the yellow talismans into his storage pouch and laughed. These 100 high-grade fireball talismans are all genuine goods. I wonder if fellow Taoist Xiao is taking a high-grade spirit stone? Or 100 medium-grade spirit stones? Of course it's 100 medium-grade spirit stones. Xiao Hua said without the slightest hesitation. A high-grade spirit stone How do you want us to divide afterwards? He shut his mouth with some regret. And, since it's like this, fellow Daoist Xiao, please follow me. Tian Haoguang laughed as he led Xiaohua out of the secret room. Only after they stepped out of the room did Xiaohua's heart, which was hanging in the air, finally relax and let out a small breath. Fellow Daoist Xiao, please wait a moment. Tian Haoguang said and walked to the side. Xiaohua nodded his head and raised his eyes to look inside the shop. At this time, there were already several groups of cultivators around the 8th or 9th level of qi refinement picking out yellow talismans or talisman crafting materials in this small shop. The Qingmiao child who didn't see eye to eye with Xiaohua was extremely busy. These are fellow Taoist spirit stones. Fellow Taoist, please count them and keep them well. Not long after, Tian Haoguang came back with a small storage pouch in his hand and handed it to Xiaohua. Xiaohua didn't look carefully and nodded. How can this junior not be at ease with senior Tian handling things? As he spoke, he took the storage pouch and put the spirit stones into his own storage pouch without leaving a trace. He handed the empty storage pouch back to Tian Haoguang. After Tian Haoguang took it, he slapped it with his hand and took out 2 medium-grade spirit stones from the storage pouch at his waist and handed them to Xiaohua. Fellow Daoist Xiao, these are the spirit stones returned by fellow Daoist for the talisman brush. Hee, of course, there are also some of my humble store's appreciation. If you have any more good things like this in the future, don't forget my humble store. Xiaohua's eyes narrowed from smiling. He rubbed his hands and said, This is too embarrassing. I've troubled senior. As he spoke, his 2 hands had already received the 2 mid-grade spirit stones. With a wave of his hand, he placed them into his storage pouch. Tian Haoguang's expression didn't change. He slapped his hands again and took out a stack of talisman papers. He handed it over with a smile and said, These are 100 high-grade talisman papers. Fellow Daoist Xiao, if you have the chance, please give them to fellow Daoist's master. Just say, it's a small token of appreciation from my talisman refining school. Oh, fellow Daoist Xiao, don't misunderstand. These are 2 good things. I can't make the decision and I don't dare to give them too much. These are just for senior to play with when he has free time. I really don't respect you enough. So it's like this, Xiaohua suddenly understood. He took it and said, But senior Tian, I'm afraid there won't be many opportunities like last night. However, if there is any opportunity, this junior will definitely explain senior's intentions. I hope senior can understand this junior's difficulties. It's fine, Tian Haoguang waved his hand and said in a low voice. I won't hide it from fellow Daoist Xiao. I really want to know. If your school's master used high-grade talisman ink and high-grade talisman paper to refine a fireball talisman, what kind of power would it have? This still depends on the opportunity. Xiaohua was a bit embarrassed. He looked at the high-grade talisman ink at the side and secretly said, You should also give a few pieces of high-grade talisman ink. Otherwise, how can I craft talismans for you? Unfortunately, high-grade talisman ink is worth a high-grade spirit stone. How could Tian Haoguang dare to make a decision on his own? Even if Xiaohua looked at it 100 times, he would only act as if he didn't see it. Seeing that Tian Haoguang didn't have any reaction, Xiaohua secretly felt that it was a pity. He cupped his hands and said, Senior Tian, this junior doesn't dare to stay for long. I'm sure senior brothers are already waiting anxiously. If there's an opportunity in the future, this junior will come to consult senior again. Tian Haoguang also returned the greeting. Well said, my humble store welcomes fellow Daoist Xiao at any time. Xiaohua nodded, turned around, and steadily walked out of the yellow talisman store. With every step he took, he relaxed a bit. At the same time, he was also afraid of making another mistake. Fortunately, Tian Haoguang seemed to be really busy in the store. After sending Xiaohua to the door, he immediately turned around to greet the customers, and didn't give Xiaohua an extra glance. Chapter 1307. Xiaohua didn't turn his head back. With a calm and composed appearance, he exited the yellow talisman shop and hurriedly left in a certain direction. It was as if there really were many fellow disciples waiting for him in front of him. After turning a corner on the street, Xiaohua slightly turned his body. Seeing that there wasn't anyone behind him, he immediately turned around and headed in another direction. A moment later, he quickly flashed into a seemingly remote alley. Ha ha! Xiaohua immediately jumped up, releasing the joy and worry that he had been suppressing for a long time. Don't be fooled by his calm appearance just now. His heart was really nervous. In the weapon refining school's shop, his hand almost never left his storage pouch. There was a flight talisman inside. Xiaohua was always worried that Tian Haoguang would do something unexpected. He was confident that he could use the flight talisman to escape the shop before Tian Haoguang had any strange thoughts. However, when he was testing the fireball talisman in the secret room, his life was really in Tian Haoguang's hands. Fortunately, everything went smoothly. Tian Haoguang was really like what Fan Riguan said. He was extremely principled and his reputation wasn't for nothing. He didn't covet Xiaohua's high-grade fireball talisman. Instead, he gave him a lot of things. Pinching the storage pouch at his waist, there were 120 mid-grade spirit stones inside. It was really a large sum of wealth. How could Xiaohua not be happy? However, when he looked up, he was dumbfounded again. Because he was in a hurry to leave, he got lost. Without any other choice, he could only find someone to ask for directions. Pitiful Xiaohua. He really didn't see the world. It was merely 100 mid-grade spirit stones. In his heart, it was an enormous wealth. However, in the eyes of the refining talisman school's Tian Haoguang, it really wasn't much. It was impossible for him to offend the non-existent, powerful school that Xiaohua spoke of just for such a small thing. Xiaohua was just not confident in his heart, and was afraid that others would see through his secret. A guilty conscience, presumably this was also the reason. However, the matter wasn't so simple. When Xiaohua walked out of the refining talisman school shop, the cultivator who was selecting yellow talismans inadvertently raised his head and glanced at Xiaohua's back. He then inadvertently asked, "Who is this person? He doesn't look young. How come his cultivation is only at the second level of qi refining?" I don't know about that. All I know is that this guy has a high-grade yellow talisman on him, and wants to extort a used talisman brush from my refining talisman school. He wants my refining talisman school to return him 30 low-grade spirit stones. Qing Miao was definitely still angry about the small amount of spiritual stones. She said indignantly, "What's so great about having a powerful sect? You look older than me, but your cultivation is not as good as mine. Even in their sect, you're just an errand boy. What's there to be proud of? This brat has a sect? You have a high-grade yellow talisman?" The cultivator was clearly surprised. "What? Senior Zhang knows this fellow Taoist?" Qing Miao was shocked and her expression changed slightly. "Of course not. Of course not." The fourth layer qi refining cultivator hurriedly waved his hand and bitterly smiled. "I'm just a rogue cultivator. How could I have the qualifications to know a second layer qi refining disciple who carries a high-grade yellow talisman with him? I only saw a loose cultivator in my cloud garden who had a similar back as this guy." "Oh, so it's like that." Qing Miao's expression returned to normal and she said with a smile, "If it's a rogue cultivator, I might really have to teach this guy a lesson." "Qing Miao, what are you talking about?" Not far away, Tian Haoguang heard and scolded. "Fellow Taoist Zhang is also a rogue cultivator. Aren't you talking to fellow Taoist Zhang?" "Fellow Taoist Zhang, please don't take it to heart." Tian Haoguang smiled apologetically towards the cultivator. I wouldn't dare. The cultivator surnamed Zhang smiled and cupped his hands. "Zhang Zhihao, quickly come and take a look." A cultivator beside Tian Haoguang seemed to have discovered something and called out. Fellow Taoist son, what did you discover? You're actually directly calling I by my name like this?" Zhang Zhihao was somewhat displeased. He tilted his head and looked at Xiaohua's almost invisible back. A pensive expression appeared in his eyes, and he quickly walked towards that cultivator. Far away, Xiaohua, who was looking for people to scout the way, simply didn't know that he was deliberately mystifying himself, and wanted to remove the matter of making high-grade yellow talismans from himself. Trying to cover it up only made it more conspicuous. He had provoked trouble for himself. Xiao Hua found a middle-stage foundation establishment senior and respectfully asked for directions. Just as he arrived at a somewhat familiar street, he suddenly heard a pleasantly surprised voice behind him. That voice was so pleasantly surprised that even the tone of the voice had changed. It was shouting. Taoist Master Xiao. Xiao Hua stared blankly and looked left and right. There didn't seem to be anyone else in the surroundings, but he wasn't some Taoist master. Without any reason, Xiao Hua had no choice but to stop and turn his head to look. This look didn't matter, but Xiao Hua almost wanted to slap out a flight talisman from his storage pouch and fly away. Everyone, the person behind Xiao Hua needn't be said. It was none other than the waiter, Fan Riguan. At this moment, in Xiao Hua's heart, the victim's mother had come knocking. The voice was pleasantly surprised. Was there even a need to say it? He had finally found the well-intentioned culprit. Xiao Hua directly ignored the pleasant surprise on Fan Riguan's face. He clearly understood in his heart that the parasol pill couldn't cure his mother's chronic illness. Thus he braced himself and stepped forward, cupping his hands and saying, "This, Brother Fan, I'm really sorry. My cultivation is shallow, and I didn't know the severity of the matter." Not waiting for Xiao Hua to finish speaking, Fan Riguan also didn't care what Xiao Hua said. He quickly stepped forward and kowtowed, saying, "Taoist Master Xiao, I kowtow and thank Taoist Master Xiao for your great kindness. I am only a mortal. I have no way of repaying Taoist Master Xiao's great kindness. I can only thank you. Ask Taoist Master Xiao for your understanding." What? Xiao Hua's face was first extremely pleasantly surprised, but soon after, it became abnormally awkward. He reached out to scratch his still somewhat bald head and helped Fan Riguan up, saying, "This, Brother Fan." Hearing this, Fan Riguan's complexion greatly changed. He hurriedly said, "Taoist Master Xiao, please don't call me that. I'm just a mortal. I can't wait for Senior Immortal to call me that. Just call me Ajen." Ajen? Xiao Hua was slightly stunned. He secretly said, "This has nothing to do with the 3 words Fan Riguan. This is my childhood name. Only mother and father can call me that. If Senior Immortal doesn't mind, you can call me that," Fan Riguan said with gratitude in his eyes. This Xiao Hua hesitated for a moment, then slightly nodded. With the appearance of an enlightened expert, he said with a smile, "Since that's the case, I won't be polite. Looking at your appearance, your mother should be fine, right?" Fan Riguan was stunned. Soon after, he said with a smile, "Senior Immortal has misunderstood. When I was young, my biological father and mother had already passed away. The mother I'm talking about is my wife's mother." "Oh, for your wife's mother. You're actually pleading for others to take pity on her?" Xiao Hua was astonished. "I thought that she was your biological mother." "Yes. Although mother isn't my biological mother, and I also live in her family, mother raised me as her own. What does it matter if I give up a little face?" Fan Riguan said with a smile. "However, even if I give up my face, if I don't meet a Senior Immortal like Taoist Xiao who bemoans the state of the universe and the fate of mankind, then I can't help it." But Xiao Hua scratched his head. The parasol pill is only an ordinary pill used to treat injuries. Even if the medicinal power is strong, how can it cure Fan Riguan's mother's chronic illness? It's really inconceivable. Could it be that Fan Riguan's mother has internal injuries? Not an illness? Ajen, that. Can you tell I the process of your mother taking the pill? Xiao Hua thought for a moment and asked. That's exactly what I want Taoist Xiao to know. Fan Riguan quickly said. Also, I still have some things to tell Senior Immortal. Oh, tell me about the situation first. Xiao Hua directly ignored the latter part of the sentence. He really wanted to know why the parasol pill was effective. Yesterday when I received Taoist Zhao's immortal pill, I was pleasantly surprised. When I walked, it was as if I was stepping on clouds. My feet were soft. Perhaps Taoist Xiao doesn't know, but mother has been ill for a long time and the situation is not good. If there was no immortal pill, she might have passed away at any time. Therefore, I wanted to send this immortal pill back. I almost couldn't wait until this morning. Fan Riguan said embarrassedly. Coincidentally, there was a senior immortal who wanted to go to the west side of the city. I begged him and kowtowed in front of that senior immortal. That senior immortal reluctantly agreed to let me go. That shuttle is really fast. Last night was the first time I sat on a senior immortal's immortal item. It actually took less than an hour to reach the west side of the city. Daoist Xiao doesn't know, right? In the past, I had to walk for more than half a day. Fan Riguan's mood was obviously very good. His words were also very long-winded. However, Xiaohua was also very happy to share his joy and didn't interrupt. He had a smile on his face and didn't reveal any trace of anxiety in his heart. Oh, look at how happy I am. Where did I stop talking? Fan Riguan still wanted to say more, but he suddenly realized something and smiled apologetically. When I returned home, my wife, my daughter and mother were all very happy. When I couldn't wait to take out the immortal pill that Daoist Xiao bestowed, Mother refused to take it no matter what. Why is that? Xiaohua blurted out. Fan Riguan's mother obviously didn't know that this parasol pill couldn't cure illness. How could she refuse to take it? Mother wanted my daughter to take it. Fan Riguan's eyes slowly revealed a trace of gratification. Jen, could it be, your daughter is also sick? Xiaohua was stunned and immediately understood the meaning of Fan Riguan's words just now. She still wanted to ask for the parasol pill. No, Fan Riguan's face immediately turned red. He repeatedly waved his hand and said, My daughter is only 5 years old this year. How could she be sick? Oh, so it's like that. Xiaohua nodded and asked. Then what happened next? Then my daughter, of course, also refused to take the immortal pill. But mother only stuffed the immortal pill into her hand and didn't pay attention to it anymore. Fan Riguan sighed and continued. Chapter 1308. Looking at mother's appearance, this elixir is definitely for my daughter to take. But, although my daughter is only 5 years old, she is still young. She gave the elixir to her mother and insisted on my wife taking it. Fan Riguan glanced at Xiaohua and continued. Then your wife's body is also unwell? Xiaohua suddenly understood. No, my wife is only 24 years old and has never been unwell. Who would have thought that Fan Riguan would wave his hand again? That's strange, Xiaohua said with a smile. The medicinal pill this poor Daoist gave. Although it's a medicinal pill used by us cultivators, it's also not a true immortal pill. Even if it's taken, it can't keep one from aging, let alone prolong one's lifespan. This Fan Riguan hesitated for a moment, but still smiled apologetically and said, Daoist Master Xiao, this little one knows that immortal cultivators cut off the grudges of the mortal world, emphasizing on a pure heart and few desires. This little one might not understand the feelings between family members like this little one. As for the specific matters, this little one will not say too much. Daoist Master Xiao, just treat it as listening to a story. Oh. Xiaohua smiled and nodded slightly. Then please continue. Yes, I will let the immortal know. How can my wife take this elixir? Naturally, she still pushed it to my mother, but my mother did not want to take it, so she pushed it back and forth. In the end, she could only think of a method of drawing straws. But just as this little one was about to make paper balls, my mother and my wife separately looked for this little one, and gave this little one the same idea. What idea? Xiaohua was surprised, but in his heart, he was also moved by this family's love for each other. It was very simple. Just make 3 identical paper balls with words. Whoever caught them would take the elixir. However, my mother let my daughter take the first one, and my wife let my mother take the first one. Yes, I understand. Xiaohua asked curiously, how did you deal with it? This little one could not. I used an ordinary pill as an elixir and let my daughter take it. Fan Riguan said embarrassedly. After all, my mother did not have much time left, and my daughter was still young. Then, why did you give the pill to your mother? Xiaohua asked curiously. Actually, it's very simple. I put the elixir into the herbs that mother usually takes, and let my wife feed it to mother. Fan Riguan smiled and said. If I knew it would be so troublesome, I wouldn't have told them at first. Trouble? Xiaohua sighed. This kind of trouble. I hope it's everywhere in the world. Taoist Master Xiao is indeed different from the other immortals. Fan Riguan praised. If it were others, I'm afraid they would have been annoyed by my words. Hee, that's why I said that I's cultivation is shallow. Xiaohua disagreed. My cultivation is shallow, but that's only for now. With spiritual Master Zhao's breadth of mind, it's only a matter of time before I advance to the spirit severing stage. Fan Riguan said respectfully. Spirit severing? Xiaohua asked curiously. What realm is that? Realm? Fan Riguan's face immediately turned red. I'm just talking nonsense. I only heard the immortals chatting in the inn. They said that it's a higher cultivation than Jinghua City's City Lord Lu. Oh, is it spirit severing stage? Xiaohua suddenly remembered what Zhang Qingxiao said occasionally. Yes, it's spirit severing stage. There's a Jindan immortal elder who said that spirit severing stage is turning a baby into a primordial spirit. Those who can become spirit severing stage are called spirit severing stage or spirit severing stage. Fan Riguan quickly explained. He didn't understand cultivation, so his explanation was a mess. However, he also let Xiaohua know that the spirit severing stage is the spirit severing stage. Hee, little brother actually knows more than I, Xiaohua said with a smile. What, it's just that I've been in the inn for a long time and heard a lot. Fan Riguan immediately said. Oh right, Taoist Master Zhao's immortal pill is really powerful. My mother just ate the herb, and immediately her stomach felt like it was being cut by a knife. Then her whole body was in pain. My mother's face was pale at that time, and her 7 orifices were all bleeding. Sigh. That's right, Xiaohua secretly said. Wuxia pill is a pill used by cultivators. The meridians of the mortal world are weak, so of course they can't withstand it. Senior Bai is really right. I won't hide it from Taoist Master Xiao. I was also scared silly at that time. I even blamed Taoist Master Xiao in my heart. Fan Riguan looked at Xiaohua and said embarrassedly. But I know that Taoist Master Xiao is a kind and compassionate person. You definitely won't lie to me, so I still believe in Taoist Master Xiao. Hee, as expected, in the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, when my mother spat out a few mouthfuls of dirty blood and didn't have any strength left, her face suddenly became rosy again. She only said that her body was incomparably comfortable. She actually effortlessly got up and let my wife prepare a bath. Ah. Incomparably comfortable? Xiaohua was surprised. He somewhat didn't understand the meaning of this sentence. And I also asked my mother later. She said that there seemed to be a little mouse scurrying around in her body. Fan Riguan replied. Xiaohua suddenly realized. Isn't this the strange thing inside the Wuxia pill that Sect Master talked about? It's precisely this thing that made the Wuxia pill a top-quality pill. He remembered that those top-quality Wuxia pills that Xiao Yuehong refined were all kept by Xiao Yuehong himself. He didn't give them to him. When Xiaohua looked at the Wuxia pills in the jade bottles that Xiao Xianrui gave him in his mind, he immediately understood the whole story. Immediately, Xiaohua's tears fell like rain. Trouble didn't only exist in the mortal world. It still existed in the cold and merciless world of cultivators. Taoist Master Xiao, Taoist Master Xiao. Seeing this, Fan Riguan was greatly alarmed. He hurriedly waved his hand. This kind of immortal pill. I don't dare to be greedy. Bullshit. Xiaohua immediately stomped his feet and jumped up. He pointed at Fan Riguan and scolded. Your family's son knows to give the medicinal pill to his mother. How can this poor Taoist be stingy with this insignificant medicinal pill? You bastard. You're really gauging the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain. Looking at that flustered and exasperated appearance, how could he still be a cultivator's senior immortal? Seeing that Xiaohua was angry, Fan Riguan was so frightened that he immediately knelt down. Taoist Xiao, don't be anxious. Taoist Xiao, don't be anxious. Who am I anxious with? Do I need to be anxious with you? Xiaohua suddenly felt sorrow from the bottom of his heart. He looked up at the sky and said angrily, the heavens are unfair. Who's causing trouble? An angry shout descended from the sky. A very strange figure, like a real shadow, floated up from the ripples of the nearby lake and flew towards where Xiaohua was standing. Xiaohua was greatly alarmed. He immediately restrained his somewhat frantic emotions. He looked over and saw that the shadow was holding a sickle-like object in its hand. Its appearance was the same as the image he saw in the hologram when he entered Jingbua City. Without waiting for Xiaohua to speak, Fan Riguan immediately stepped forward and bowed very respectfully. "I'm Fan Riguan from Flying Fish Inn. Greetings, sir." "And what's going on here? Why is there someone shouting?" The shadow's figure was still bent, like a ribbon flying in the air. "Hee, it's me who angered this Senior Immortal. Senior Immortal scolded me. I'm apologizing to Senior Immortal. It's not a big deal." Fan Riguan slightly glanced at Xiaohua and gave him a meaningful glance. Xiaohua took a deep breath and wiped away the tears on his face. He cupped his hands and said, "I was a bit reckless. Please forgive me." "Oh." The shadow floated in the air for a moment. A wooden voice echoed, "Although Fan Riguan is an ordinary person, he's still a servant in Jingbua City. His safety is protected. Fellow Taoist, you can't rashly decide to take someone's life." "I don't dare. And it's good that you don't dare. Shouting is nothing. However, City Lord Zhao is receiving a distinguished guest today. He's touring Jingbua City. If you disturb him, it'll be a capital offense. It's best if you know your place." "I understand." Xiaohua's heart trembled. He thought of the nascent soul cultivator he met outside the city 2 days ago. "Take care of yourself." The shadow was like a fluttering ribbon. It gradually went far away and fell into the lake. After a long while, Fan Riguan stood up and said in a low voice, "Taoist Master Xiao, please don't speak loudly again. Please follow me to Flying Fish Inn." Xiaohua nodded. Just as he was about to take a step, he thought of something again and shook his head, saying, "I should stay at another inn. I'm afraid I can't stay at Flying Fish Inn." "Why?" Fan Riguan stared blankly and asked shortly after. "Hee, yesterday there was a waiter who asked I for the so-called immortal Tao. If I follow you back, won't I be noisy to death?" Xiaohua sighed. In his heart, he was actually still afraid that the refining talisman school's people would discover that he was a loose cultivator. "So it's like that." Fan Riguan immediately understood. He said very guiltily, "I was reckless. I didn't expect that my sudden departure would bring Taoist Master Xiao so much trouble. I'm truly ashamed." "There's no need to be like this. It's not all your fault." Xiaohua looked at the sky and said with a smile, "Eyes matter with you is over. If you don't have anything else, I will look for another inn. Let's part ways here." Xiaohua figured out that Fan Riguan's mother's illness was cured because of his top-grade Wucheng pill. Naturally, he also knew the use of those Wucheng pills in the space. The most important thing was that these pills were refined by Xiao Yuehong. Since Fan Riguan's wife and daughter didn't have any incurable illnesses, he naturally didn't want to waste these pills. Fan Riguan heard this and became anxious. He stepped forward and pulled Xiaohua's sleeve. He said with a smile, "Taoist Master Xiao, I have a presumptuous request. I don't know if I should say it." "Alas, since it's a presumptuous request, of course there's no need to say it." Xiaohua shook his head. "Yes, Taoist Master Xiao is right," Fan Riguan said respectfully. "However, my mother knew that it was Taoist Master Xiao who bestowed the immortal pills and wanted to thank you in person. It's just that we mortals can only stay in the western part of Jingbua City and can't come here as we please. Therefore, I came here in a hurry to invite Taoist Master Xiao to come to the western part of my city when you have time, and accept my family's thanks." "No need," Xiaohua waved his hand and shook his head. "It's an unintentional act. You don't have to thank me. If you have the heart, just properly show filial piety to my mother." Chapter 1309. "Wait a moment, Taoist Xiao," Fan Riguan said anxiously. Actually, then he looked left and right. This street was remote, and there were only a few small shops on the side. He didn't see anyone going in or out. Only then did he lower his voice and say, "My mother has something very important to tell Taoist Xiao. It seems that my mother also has something to thank Taoist Xiao." You are not a person of the secular world. What do you have that cultivators like us would like? Xiao Hua said with a frown. Taoist Xiao, I am naturally very ordinary. But my wife's family has some stories about their ancestors. Oh, is it about your wife and your daughter? Xiao Hua seemed to understand. Yes, it is indeed so. My mother said that it is rare to see a loose cultivator like Taoist Xiao who gives immortal pills to ordinary people without even asking. If Taoist Xiao still can't believe it, then no cultivator in this world can. Only an immortal cultivator like Taoist Master Xiao, who is sincere and caring, can be entrusted to me, can be worthy of my mother's thanks. Fan Riguan said sincerely. Hearing this, Xiao Hua's face turned a little red. It was only because he had just entered this so-called cultivation world for 3 years that he had yet to truly experience the cruelty of the cultivation world. In his heart, he still had a simple and honest heart. Entrusted? Xiao Hua's face was red and his heart was moved. He said with a smile, You have a good idea. Could it be that you have something good to exchange for I's 2 pills? This time, it was Fan Riguan's turn to blush. However, Fan Riguan clenched his teeth and knelt down in front of Xiao Hua again. He kowtowed and said, This lowly one is somewhat shameless. Since Taoist Xiao has already given me the pills, I shouldn't ask for more. But Taoist Xiao, please be merciful. The pills are extremely casual in Taoist Xiao's hands, but in my eyes, they are immortal pills that can save my family. Taoist Xiao, please come to my house. If Taoist Xiao doesn't like the things my mother takes out, Taoist Xiao can leave. What do you think? Xiao Hua's curiosity was immediately piqued. He helped him up and asked curiously, Jen, didn't you just say that your wife and your daughter are not sick? Why are you asking for medicinal pills now? Fan Riguan sighed and said, Sai, I'm glad you know that even if you're not sick, you'll get the same illness as my mother when you're 50 years old. That's strange. Xiao Hua's heart stirred. He smiled and said, Isn't that easy? Now that we know, we can just find someone else to do it again. Taoist Master Xiao, please don't mock me. I know that I can't judge Taoist Master Xiao's age from your appearance. However, you don't look old. You may not be able to understand this kind of familial affection in the mortal world. Even if I have a wife at home, I'm not willing to abandon her. Love is stronger than gold. Xiao Hua couldn't help but smile. He wasn't someone who would spoil the mood. Blocking Fan Riguan's line of sight, he waved his hand and took out 2 parasol pills. Handing them over, he said, This medicinal pill, to be honest, it's of great significance to I. I've already decided not to use it, but after hearing what you said, if I don't do anything, my heart won't be at peace. Won't I ruin my cultivation? Take this pill and give it to your wife and daughter to consume. Who knew that Fan Riguan wasn't like what he thought? He pushed Xiao Hua's hand and said resolutely, When we came, Mother already said that if Taoist Master Xiao doesn't personally go, I definitely can't accept this medicinal pill. So it's like this. Xiao Hua was a little surprised. Yes, Mother's orders. I definitely won't dare to disobey. Fan Riguan nodded. Then all right. Xiao Hua accepted the parasol pills. He looked around and said with a smile, I still have some matters to attend to at the store over there. You follow me. Oh no, you should wait here. Wait for me to exchange some spirit stones. Then I'll go with you to the west of the city. Yes, I'll listen to Taoist Master Zhao's instructions. Hearing this, Fan Riguan's face was filled with joy. He looked at where Xiao Hua was pointing and asked with concern, Senior Immortal is going to the store to exchange for spirit stones? Spirit stones? Oh yes. Xiao Hua nodded. Then will Senior Immortal use spirit stones to cultivate or exchange for other things? Fan Riguan continued to ask. Spirit stones can be used to cultivate? Xiao Hua was stunned. Fan Riguan was even more shocked. Taoist Master Xiao won't use spirit stones to cultivate? Xiao Hua scratched his head. Didn't I tell you that I's cultivation is shallow? I don't know how to use spirit stones to cultivate. Oh, so it's like this. Then Taoist Master Xiao will use spirit stones to exchange for things? Yes. Then Senior Immortal. It's best not to use things to exchange for spirit stones in these stores, and then use spirit stones to buy things in the stores. Why is that? Could it be that Senior Immortal doesn't know about Jingbua City's e-market? Fan Riguan asked curiously. I naturally know about e-market, but isn't it still early for e-market? Xiaohua was a little embarrassed. Oh, so it's like this. Then Taoist Master Xiao should go to e-market to take a look. E-market is different from e-market. E-market only opens once a month, but e-market opens every day at noon. I also heard from other senior immortals in the inn that instead of using things to exchange for spirit stones in the stores, and then going to other stores to exchange for things, it's better to directly take things from e-market and use things to exchange for things. Although there are some stores in Jingbua City that have a good reputation, they still need to make a profit. Their prices are all low and high. It's not worth it for Taoist Master Xiao to look for them. There's such a thing. Xiaohua suddenly realized. Wouldn't it be a big loss for him to pass through two stores like this? At the same time, he also thought of the e-market, that the boy in the refining glyph school whose cultivation was higher than his mentioned in the store. At this time, it was already afternoon. Presumably, that e-market had already dispersed. If Xiaohua didn't go to e-market, then naturally there was nothing else to do. All right. I will go with you to the west of the city. However, when you come back tomorrow, you still need to bring I to e-market, Xiaohua said with a smile. Taoist Master Xiao saved my mother. I can't repay you even if I have to sacrifice my life. Senior Immortal, if there's anything you need, you can instruct me, Fan Riguan said with great joy. Then he looked at the sky and said with slight hesitation, Taoist Master Xiao, if we go to the west of the city now, it's a bit late. We might not be able to arrive by nightfall. Then, even if we go to e-market tomorrow, I'm afraid it's still not possible to go to the west of the city. Xiaohua frowned and said, unless we leave early tomorrow morning. Really? Fan Riguan said embarrassedly. Right, I heard from the waiter in the Flying Fish Inn that you and a fellow cultivator went to the west of the city on some shuttle boat. It's very fast. Xiaohua suddenly thought of something. Yes, the shuttle boat is indeed fast, but the cost of spirit stones is also considerable. I don't have any reason to waste your spirit stones. Fan Riguan immediately objected. Then how many spirit stones will it take to go to the west of the city? According to Senior Immortal, it should be a mid-grade spirit stone. A mid-grade spirit stone. Xiaohua also underestimated it in his heart. His high-grade fireball talisman could only be exchanged for a mid-grade spirit stone. To be honest, he was a bit reluctant to part with it. But thinking about it again, he was waiting here for Tian Qi Qing Fengmin's message. If there was suddenly news that Hua Yin Park had enough talisman masters, he might not have the time. This mid-grade spirit stone might really have to be spent. Thinking of this, Xiaohua suddenly seemed to feel that something was wrong, but after thinking for a while, he couldn't figure out what it was, so he had to stop thinking about it. He only said to Fan Riguan, this poor Taoist time is limited. I'm afraid I can't stay in Jingbua City for long. Take this poor Taoist to the shuttle. This poor Taoist can still afford the immortal stones. Thank you, Taoist Master Xiao. Fan Riguan was very grateful. He quickly took Xiaohua to the lake in front of them. Seeing the empty lake and the small boat that was gliding along the surface of the lake not far away, Xiaohua was a little surprised. Fan Riguan was very experienced. He walked to the front of a very ordinary-looking stone pillar and said respectfully, Taoist Master Xiao, please inject your spirit energy into this jade stone. Xiaohua walked over and sized it up. This is a 3 feet tall, 1-inch square jade stone pillar. It was gray and not very conspicuous. Only the top of the pillar was protruding, and there were some faintly discernible strange runes on it. Xiaohua stretched out his finger and exerted his strength, pointing at the top of the jade pillar. The lake in front of him immediately began to bubble, and countless tiny waves swarmed out from the bottom of the lake. Immediately after, a faint blue light flashed, and a small boat that was 3 feet long and 3 feet wide appeared at the edge of the lake where the waves were surging. After the small boat appeared, the lake regained its calm. Fan Riguan said happily, the shuttle boat has appeared. Taoist Master Xiao, please move. Okay, Xiaohua agreed. He lifted his leg and got on the shuttle boat. Fan Riguan followed behind him. Taoist Master Xiao, please inject your spirit stone into this groove. Fan Riguan pointed at a circular groove in the middle of the shuttle boat and said. Xiao Hua said as he placed a mid-grade spirit stone into the groove. Following the insertion of the mid-grade spirit stone, the groove shone with a brilliant light, covering the groove. The mid-grade spirit stone disappeared, and then, a faint blue light screen rose from the surroundings of the shuttle, covering Xiao Hua and Fan Riguan within. Immediately after, in front of Xiao Hua and Fan Riguan, several different colored light balls appeared in midair. Xiao Hua glanced at them. Different words appeared on them, such as east of the city, west of the city, north of the city, south of the city. Fan Riguan said from the side. Taoist Master Xiao, please use your spirit energy to point at the west of the city. Xiao Hua did as he was told. The several balls of light in front of him disappeared, and a huge diagram appeared once again. There were many tiny light spots on the diagram, making Xiao Hua confused. Beside him, Fan Riguan said in a low voice, Taoist Master Xiao, I'll have to trouble you to use your immortal power here. As he spoke, he pointed at an extremely small light dot on the left side of the diagram. Xiao Hua very strangely sent his spirit energy to that light dot. Immediately after, several fist-sized words flew out from the diagram. It was Jingfanqi. This is the place where this lowly secular people live. Fan Riguan smiled apologetically. Chapter 13:10. Oh, Xiao Hua nodded. He now understood that the second image that appeared just now should be the image of the entire western part of Jinghua City. The countless tiny dots of light were also the places that the shuttle could reach. However, it seems that there are no dots of light around Jingfanqi. Moreover, this area is especially big. It takes up almost 60% of the western part of the city. Xiao Hua was a little confused. He pointed at the area and asked, Jen, these places can't be reached by shuttle? Reporting to Taoist Xiao, the place that Taoist Xiao pointed to just now is the only place where the shuttle can reach Jingfanqi. Any further inside is where the people of the secular world live. The shuttle can't enter. The shuttle can't enter such a big place. Xiao Hua asked curiously. Exactly. The people of the secular world can't be compared to the immortals. Jingfanqi is surrounded by an immortal array. No one without an immortal talisman can come out. This is also the reason why my mother can't personally come to thank Taoist Xiao. Fan Riguan explained. Moreover, there are many people of the secular world in the western part of the city. I'm afraid there are more of them than the immortals. That's why they occupy most of the western part of the city. Oh, I see. Xiao Hua nodded. He then looked at the shuttle and said, Now that we know the place, how should I steer the shuttle? The shuttle doesn't need to be controlled by the immortals. You just need to choose the place you want to go. Then use your immortal energy to activate the immortal stones that were placed on the shuttle. The shuttle will follow the route set by Jinghua City and fly to the place you want to go. Haha, I see. That's not bad. Xiao Hua was still worrying about how to not get lost. When he heard this, he laughed and sent his immortal energy into the groove where the immortal stones were. As expected, the shuttle moved slowly. Then, it gradually accelerated and flew over the lake toward the western part of the city. Xiao Hua stood on the shuttle. The light blue brilliance blocked all the waves and gales outside. Moreover, the shuttle was unusually stable. There were no bumps. It was no different from standing on the ground. Hee, this shuttle is really strange. If it's just one or two, then that's fine. They're just ordinary magic tools. But what's rare is that all the lakes in Jinghua City are filled with shuttles. I'm afraid there are tens of thousands of them. Xiao Hua's mind had already calmed down. He looked at the shuttle under his feet with interest, as well as the many different colored shuttles on the lake. Although the surface of the lake was vast, there were even more shuttles. Within a radius of about 10 zhang around Xiao Hua, there were 2 shuttles moving in the same direction. From time to time, there would be shuttles flashing past Xiao Hua's left side, either in front of the shuttles or behind the shuttles. Their speed was extremely fast, and the distance of 10 zhang was covered in the blink of an eye. Many times, Xiao Hua felt that they would collide with each other. Seeing Xiao Hua clench his fists, Fan Riguan behind him takes half a step forward and says in a low voice, Taoist Master Xiao, don't be afraid, this shuttle's route is already fixed, all the shuttles won't collide with each other. Why would I be afraid? I was just admiring the scenery of Jingbua City. Can't you slow down a bit? Xiaohua wouldn't admit it. He only smiles and says, but before he can finish, a shuttle suddenly appears in front of his eyes, giving him a fright. Fan Riguan smiles and doesn't say anything. Jen, tell I about Jingbua City. Xiaohua feels that he can't hold his face and asks. Yes, Taoist Master Xiao. Fan Riguan smiles and answers respectfully. However, this little one is only a mortal in Jingbua City. I only know that there are 2 old immortals in Jingbua City. One is old immortal Mu Chang, the other is the city lord of Jingbua City, immortal Lui Chuan. These 2 old immortals have been in charge of Jingbua City for several hundred years. As for other things, this little one doesn't know much about the matters of the immortals. I heard a lot from the immortals in the inn, so I'm afraid I can't get to the point. You can say whatever you want, I can also listen. Xiaohua says. Yes, this little one lives in the west of Jingbua City. My parents died when I was young. Fan Riguan knows that Xiaohua wants to know more, so he tells him everything he knows bit by bit. As it turns out, Jingbua City is divided into 4 areas, namely the west, east, south, and north of the city. The west of the city is for the common people to live in. There are about 1 million people there. Every year, Jingbua City will send special disciples to the west of the city to select children around 6 years old who can cultivate. They will be accepted as disciples of Jingbua City, and the families of these disciples will be moved to the east of the city. Naturally, the life in the east of the city and the west of the city is very different. Every person in the west of the city hopes that they can raise a child who can become a disciple of Jingbua City, so that they can live a life like an immortal. Because Jingbua City is very big, many things are not necessarily done by disciples with high cultivation. Therefore, even if a considerable number of disciples can't set foot in the 3rd level of qi refining, they are different from the cultivation sections. Their cultivation is not abolished and they are chased down the mountain, but they are made disciples who do odd jobs. However, disciples who can pass the 3rd level of qi refining have their families in the east of the city, and their families will have a new residence, so they will be separated from the other disciples who do odd jobs. Of course, there are also many places in Jingbua City that need the common people to work. These opportunities are open to the common people in the west of the city at any time. Fan Riguan belongs to this kind of people. He stands out among the common people in the west of the city, and has the opportunity to serve the immortals in the Flying Fish Inn in the south of the city. Fan Riguan doesn't know much about the north and south of Jingbua City. He only knows that the south of the city is a place where low-level cultivators move. Qi refining and foundation establishment cultivators can only stay in the south of the city. Only high-level cultivators or as core stage and above can enter the north of the city. As for what the north of the city looks like, Fan Riguan has no idea at all. After all, those who stay in the Flying Fish Inn are all rogue cultivators or qi refining stage cultivators like Xiaohua. They have no chance to enter the north of the city, so it is impossible for them to talk about it. However, Fan Riguan has heard from the 10th level qi refining stage shopkeeper of the Flying Fish Inn that the north of the city seems to be abnormally rich in spiritual qi of heaven and earth. At the same time, it is also the place where the leader of Jingbua City is located. According to Fan Riguan, entering Jingbua City was also based on one's cultivation level. Xiaohua entered through the southern city gate. Mortals couldn't enter or leave, but cultivators could enter or leave as long as they were cultivators. As for the other city gates, or refining and foundation building cultivators couldn't enter or leave. Moreover, the 4 areas of Jingbua City are protected by their own immortal formations. Random people have to check their cultivation. If they don't meet the requirements, they will have to force their way in. The disciples of Jingbua City can punish them according to the city rules. Fan Riguan said a lot of bits and pieces, and Xiaohua listened to them one by one. When they talked about cultivation, Xiaohua's heart moved. He smiled and said, "That's right. What's the deal with the camouflage of Qiqiao sect? Where can I buy it?" Camouflage? Fan Riguan was surprised at first, But then he understood. He smiled apologetically and said, "That's what the immortals use. Naturally, you have to buy it from Qiqiaosek's shop in the north of the city. Didn't you say that only golden core stage cultivators can go to the north of the city? I see a lot of cultivators wearing camouflage in the south of the city. Let me tell you, Daoist Xiao, Qiqiaosek's camouflage is very precious. According to many immortals, it has many functions and is very expensive. I'm afraid you have to use some top-grade immortal stones to buy it." "What? Top-grade spirit stones?" Xiaohua was shocked. "Aren't there only low-grade, middle-grade, and high-grade spirit stones?" Fan Riguan shook his head blankly. "I don't know about that. After all, I only heard about it from rumors." Then he explained, "However, according to what I know, other than Qiqiaosek's camouflage, many other sects have also introduced similar things. They are also called camouflage, and the price is also much lower. If Daoist Xiao wants to hide your identity, you might as well consider these camouflage." Compared to Qiqiaosek's camouflage, what's the difference? Xiaohua smiled bitterly. How could a mortal like Fan Riguan know about this? Sure enough, Fan Riguan smiled apologetically and said, "I don't know the specific differences. I only know that there are differences in concealing immortals' cultivation and appearance." "Appearance?" Xiaohua nodded. "Then according to what you know, it should be able to conceal one's appearance, right? Of course. Concealing one's appearance is the most basic. Otherwise, how could it be called a camouflage?" Fan Riguan saw that Xiaohua was very interested and knew what he was thinking. He said, "These camouflage can be bought from Qiqiaosek's shop or from other sects' shops. Of course, the other sects' camouflage won't be as expensive as Qiqiaosek's. Moreover, you can occasionally find camouflage in trading markets or trading gatherings. However, it all depends on luck. I heard that the items used for trading are extremely rare and not easy to find. If Daoist Xiao wants to get a cheap camouflage, I'm afraid you'll have to go to trading gatherings." Xiaohua nodded. He already understood that the camouflage was extremely difficult for him to obtain. He only had 100 or so middle-grade spirit stones in his storage pouch. "Let's not talk about that for now." Xiaohua glanced at the rapidly receding scene on the shore of the lake and asked, "Can you talk about the matter of your wife and your daughter, so that I can have a plan in mind?" This Fan Riguan hesitated for a moment and nodded. "The matter of my wife and daughter, I actually already knew about it before I entered the Zhu family. Oh right, my wife and mother are both surnamed Zhu. I can be considered to have married into the family. My daughter is also surnamed Zhu." Xiaohua listened and nodded slightly. However, at this moment, the entire shuttle suddenly shook violently. A huge wave of water violently threw the shuttle into the air. Not to mention Fan Riguan. Even Xiaohua was caught off guard and lost his balance. He curled up and crashed into the light barrier in front of him. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.